I'd like to call this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District, to order at 9:18 a.m. Let the record reflect that it's Tuesday, November 17th, 2020. All right. All right. If y'all would please roll call. Thank you. And let the record reflect that Commissioners Gui and Black are not present right now. All right. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. We're convened here today to discuss the port's budget for 2021, and we've all been presented with the proposed budget. We should start with you, Sandy, with the budget message from the director.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, and members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. Follows is my 2021 budget report. Our proposed budget table of contents will be the budget message, budget summary, detailed revenues and expenditures, 5-year capital improvement, our manpower table, supplemental information, long-term debt summary, and adoption ordinances. As Executive Director of the Port, I herewith submit to the Plaquemines Port Commissioners the proposed operating budget for the year 2021 and the proposed capital improvement budget for the years 2021 through 25. The budget serves as a financial tool to track the accuracy of last year's forecast and to game plan next year's financial roadmap as the Port steadily implements the Port strategic plan. As required by the Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District budget policy, I present a budget evidencing a complete fiscal plan which contains the following as aforementioned at the beginning of my presentation. As required by Port policy, presented as a balanced budget. The total estimated revenues exceed the total of proposed expenditures. The Port projects a decrease in operating revenues derived from tariffs in 2021 due to the effects of COVID-19, yet we project an increase in net assets of $164,505. The 2021 projection for Port ending net assets is $64,971,786. This budget maintains services to the Port at the current level. It includes financing for all filled and vacant positions on the current manpower table. Also included is funding for merit increases for classified employees and cost of living increases for unclassified employees when applicable. The Port uses the accrual basis of accounting under which revenues are recorded when earned and expenses are recorded when the liability is incurred. The budget basis of accounting does not materially differ from the financial reporting. The proposed budget presents a fiscally sound approach to Port finances. The Port continues to provide efficiency and exemplify fiscal responsibility. The Port expects 2021 fiscal year to be a continued success. Revenues and expenses highlight consistency of the Port's vision to be a global gateway to Mid-America. During the next few weeks, please contact my office with any questions regarding the budget or my staff as proposed. Sincerely, Menard J. Sanders, Executive Director, Plaquemines Port, Harbor, and Terminal District. And with this, Mr. Chairman, I will return it back to you. And I have instructed our Chief Financial Officer to hit the wave tops as she did in our pre-budget hearings. And we know where we're headed with this. So we're prepared to answer your questions and to adjust the budget as directed.
Thank you very much, Sandy. Are there
Yes,
any
sir.
questions from the board? Mr. Rousseau, you look eager.
No, I'm waiting on them to hand it over.
Right. Okay, good morning. We are going to start with the very next tab following the budget message, which will be the budget summary. The budget summary reflects a total revenues of $766,000. Total expenditures in the 2021 proposed budget totals $12,436,261, which gives us an excess of revenues over expenses of $164,505. Basically, what I plan to do today is to go through the total revenues, and then we can discuss any amendments that need to be made to the revenues. And then we will discuss the total expenditures by budget category. If the need is to dig deeper into the budget for departments and divisions to be specific on certain figures, then we can do that. But I think it's easier if we just go through the summary and discuss the total revenues and total expenditures for this budget. Okay, we can start with revenues. If you flip to the next page, I'm sorry, that's the total excess. Let's go back one page. I want to talk about the breakdown of net assets to complete the summary. So the port is projected to have an ending net asset of $64,971,786. That net assets are broken down by restricted net assets and unrestricted net assets. So for capital assets, we have a total of $59,412,699 restricted for capital assets, $3,919,800 for port land fund, and the remaining balance of $1,639,287 is designated for unrestricted. And that's our total net asset of $64,971,786. Now we can flip to the next page, and this is basically...
Before we leave the page, are we going to ask questions per page?
That's fine.
Okay, in our pre-budget meeting, we had a discussion about the five-year capital improvement budget, the 967,562, under the 2019 actual.
Yes, sir.
And remember, I had discussed the fact that we don't carry anything over the 2021 original, and I think the explanation was because we don't know how much is there.
Correct. As far as the remaining balance, we usually don't report it until the year is audited and closed, and we have a definite number. I do have an estimated number for you, Mr. Roussel. That number will be included in the 2021 original budget, which a new binder, after all amendments and changes are made to the proposed, will be issued out. So I will include that budgeted figure for the five-year capital improvement in the original budget.
And the remainder of whatever, 743,000 or whatever it is in the capital improvement budget, that is allocated to any specific project?
We have two capital improvement projects that is included in that restriction, and that project is the culvert replacement project that we appropriated funds for a couple of years ago pertaining to our drainage on our on some port property, and also a relocation project that we are working on also on a piece of our property.
Okay, thank you.
And those details are reflected in the five-year capital improvement tab, which is behind the details tab in this proposed budget.
Those are restricted funds dedicated to those projects.
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Next page is a breakdown in history of the land purchase fund that is reserved as well on the first summary pages. So all of these details that follow that summary page will be the supporting details to those figures. It starts in 2002. If you flip to the following page, you'll see the 2020 budgeted figure and also the 2021 budgeted figure. And the land fund had a balance, as I mentioned, of $3,918,466. Flip to the next page. That is some additional details on how we come up with those calculations and figures for the appropriations to land fund. If there's no questions, we can flip to the next page. Here I've included a grant summary, basically to provide some additional information regarding what grants the port has been awarded in the last 3 years and our federal match versus our cost match for those projects, to give you an idea of what the port actually comes out of pocket for these grant projects. If there's no questions, we can flip to the next page. This is where we are going to discuss the actual budgeted figures and any amendments that are requested to these figures. Starting off with our revenues, I do want to mention that this report was slightly revised due to a reporting error. It has been updated on our website. It's, like I mentioned, slightly different from the original copy that was issued, but if you want the revised and updated copy, you can get it from our website for this section only.
Well, you can just tell us what they are as we go through the changes?
I can, yes. Okay, so in the revenue budget, we start out for 2021 with some revenues that were budgeted for Port Security Grant Round 20. We also have some revenues budgeted for Port Security Grants Round 18. These are projects that are grants that we have been awarded but have yet to begin the project, so they are rolling over to budget 2021's budget. If we scroll down a little further, we also have some port security grants for round 2019. Same thing, we have been awarded these grants, but the projects has not been started. We also received some federal funds for the Water Resource Act regarding for a dredging project that we will be beginning in 2021 as well. Those funds were received in 2020, but again, the project was not able to begin, so those are rolling over to 2021. Our next section of revenues are our tariff revenues. We did see a decrease from 2020 to 2021, and those decreases are reflected for, as you can see, security harbor, security cargo, anchoraging, docking, as well as supplemental. And the 2021 budgeted figures are presented here. We flip to the next page. Our next section of revenues would include interest. There were some changes in interest as well, some decreases, of course, due to COVID and the effect it has had on the market and the effects on interest rates. So we did see a decrease in those revenues as well. Our next section of revenues are rents and leases. We did not see any major changes in rents and leases from 2020 to 2021. While we are speaking on this, I want to discuss an amendment. I do have an amendment for rents and leases revenue. Are we going to propose those now as we go along? I will be adding a revenue in the amount of $6,000 for rents and leases on Plymouth lease that we executed after the budget was issued.
That would be a new
Yes, it will be a new line item in the amount of 6,000.
Can you explain Plymouth a little bit?
It is a lease that we have on a piece of property, if I'm not mistaken, a laydown area, correct?
Thank you.
Plymouth, I'm sorry.
6,000 for the year or 6,000?
It's 6,000 a year, yes, so a total of $6,000 will be added to this revenue budget.
Oh, Mr. Valley, I think we're going to take questions afterwards, but is there,
After the entire budget presentation, there's a lot of items on there. There's probably about 200 or 300 items on there that are significant individually.
please step up to the mic and state your name and address, Mr. Valley.
Donald Valley, 109 Nancy Court, Belchase, Jesuit Bend. 2 or 3 questions right there. What constitutes the $323,000 that you get from leases, rents and leases? Where's the supporting documentation?
I'm sorry, what amount was that?
Rent and leases,
For 203,000?
yes.
That is an MSRC dock, which is a dock that the port owns located in Fort Jackson, and we have a lease on that property.
Is that a long-term lease?
It is a long-term lease.
Okay. Next question. The $2 million that coming from the Venture Global transaction, is that assured we're going to get that this year?
The lease is, the option lease is active, and as of now, we project that we will earn the $2 million.
There was some significant dates that required certain things to happen. Have they happened? Do we have the assurances of that? I guess I can ask Paul.
Yes.
Yes, our legal team has reviewed everything, and everything's moving forward appropriately.
And while we're on that matter, I had asked to be provided with the signature document that changed the option to what we're paying, what we're collecting now. Evidently, something was executed to change the normal option.
No, nothing was executed. You originally executed the option and the lease option all at the same time when you voted in 2015. So nothing has changed. It's just moving forward with the process. So when they notified us that they were going into the lease option, that was already triggered when you approved the document in 2015.
Well, what was the announcement that the executed lease was executed?
There was no announcement of an executed lease, sir. There was an announcement that they had decided to move into the lease option period. That's what it was about. So if you want to go back to the budget, but that's what that was about. But everything was voted on in 2015.
Mr. Matthews, I understand that, but there were some events that happened to make some announcements.
Well, they announced that they want to go into the lease option. That's all we stated. There was no signing of anything. It was just an announcement that they were now exercising their ability to go into the lease option.
The microphone.
So what was different than what we signed in 2015?
Nothing was different. They just announced that they're going into the lease option. That's all they said.
The provision was in the original document of 2015, and they announced that they were going to execute it.
And that's what I'm asking for, a copy of that provision so I can read what was announced.
Wasn't it in the Gazette on the front page?
Mr. Rousseau, we heard your question some time ago, and we were waiting for those same documents, to see those documents, what was executed. The question, though, is more significant. There's a timeline that has to be affected before we have to pay back this $12 or $30 million that's sitting out there at 12% interest. What timeline does that happen in here? Because I don't see anything in the budget that there's a trigger or discussion of the repayment of those funds.
That might be a different piece of property, Mr. Valley. That might be the
PLT.
PLT property you're referring
I
to.
understand, but I skipped to that item. It wasn't Venture Global.
Look, this is the situation. I picked up the Gazette and I read about this execution of some document. So it made me ask these questions. So several meetings ago, I asked to see what was executed. And now I'm hearing that nothing new was executed. It was the same document that was executed in 2015. So when I read the Gazette, I was a little confused as to what had been done. And now you're saying it's a section of the lease that was executed in 2015 that is being exercised or implemented. And so that's the section that I'd like to read. And
Got it.
so, thank you.
Go ahead, Shimbrow.
Free-flowing information between the staff and the board is key to have an efficient operation. We just, we want to stay on top of what's happening, and it seemed like almost splitting hairs, between, what y'all are saying here, but it didn't seem like a reason to have a party and a big get-together, and I know that wasn't y'all, that was the business association here, but it may have not jived well with the staff over there at the company that's looking to come here. They're not the kind of folks that, want to float things out, make a big deal out of things that aren't a big deal. We've ate a lot of cake here and went to a lot of parties and things like that to get things kicked off, but no pilings are going in. I think that's when the construction equipment shows up is the appropriate time to celebrate. And it confuses people. So anyway, moving on back to the actual budget here. And when these items come up, Mr. Valley, if you could, and I know the wording is a little small up there, but there are appropriate places to ask those questions. And I want to have you, dialed in and asking them at the appropriate places as we go through the budget.
Which are what? When to ask the question?
So, for instance, the rents/leases, that was the appropriate place to ask questions about, say, the VG lease. Whereas the pilot payment would be the appropriate place to ask questions about the PLT lease. All right, moving along, please.
Okay. Well, that summarizes our revenues. As I said, I do have an amendment to add an additional revenue to the revenue budget.
I'll offer the amendment.
Second.
All right, offered by Roussel, seconded by Hognovich.
You want the machines open or?
Yes, please. Like to call a question? And let the record reflect, all in favor with Black and Gui absent. All right, moving along, please.
Okay.
And could I please just get the spelling for that to make a note here in my book?
For the lease,
Yeah, you said Playmont?
is it
Billway.
Billway?
Okay, all right.
Okay, I'm sorry. I must have spelled it wrong.
I didn't know, I knew they were doing the work. I thought maybe they had a subcontractor or something there. All right, thank you.
Okay, so with that amendment, that would increase our revenues by 6,000 from originally proposed at 12,600,766 to 12,606,766. Okay, so that concludes the revenues. Our next, we're going to move on to the expenditures, and the first budget category for expenditures is total personal services, which includes the salaries and wages and taxes and retirement.
Before we move along to that next section, the rents and leases, the pilot program is there. Mr. Valley, it seemed like you had questions. Would you like to come now and ask those about that particular project? All right. All right, moving along then.
Okay. With the total personal services, we had minor increases in this department, in this budget category. The changes included the merit increases for our employees, which are reflected in the manpower structure, which is also a section in this budget. And the other major change we had was to the retirement line item as well. A major portion of that increase, $70,000, was actually budgeted towards a non-monetary expenditure for our requirement of carrying our liability for our pension plan. So overall, regarding the actual employees and monetary monetary expenditures, there weren't a major increase from those from 2020's budget.
And do you have an amendment from the budget workshop?
I do. And that amendment, for the salaries and wages, I did break this amendment down by department and division due to the structure of the manpower, which is broken down by department and division. Our general department will have a decrease in salaries and wages of $21,000 for a new total of $930,000. And that's line item 510.005. Next amendment, line item 515.005, payroll taxes FICA will have a decrease of $1,000 for a new total of $14,000. Line item 516.105, retirement parochial will have a decrease of $5,000 for a new total of $115,000.
I ain't got that yet.
For 2462, our rescue boats department, line item 510.005, salaries and wages regular will be decreased by $62,000 for a new total of $1,364,000. Line item 515.005, payroll taxes, FICA taxes will be decreased by $5,000 for a new line item total of $20,000. Line item 516.105, retirement parochial will be decreased by $7,000 for a new total of $168,000. And that concludes the amendments for the personal services budget.
Do you have a total on that?
Yeah, I'm going to total it right now. I did it in separate. I apologize. So total decrease for salaries and wages with the boat departments is $83,000.
Mrs. Riley has Mrs. Williams has control over the presentation. Mrs. Williams, if you could, please, though, get those up there for folks to see when you get a chance.
I can type them out. I don't have my laptop with these copies to show the amendments, but I can type it out for you. I'll continue with the next one, and then I'll put it up on the screen. As far as the total, as Mr. Roussel requested. Line item 515.005, which is the payroll taxes, FICA taxes, will have a total decrease of $6,000.
What was that again? 515 what?
515.005. On the summary, it will have a total decrease of $6,000.
So the total budget of $2,377,000 is being reduced by $6,000?
$2,370,000, you said?
$2,377,000.
The salaries and wages is being reduced by a total of $83,000.
And that's in the boat department, or?
That's across both departments. We have $62,000 in the boats department and $21,000 in the general department.
Okay.
Okay. And then if you go down, I'm sorry, it's going to be on page 3, as far as your FICA taxes, which is a total budget of $40,000, that will be decreased by a total amount of $6,000.
So, Benny, can you clarify what you're trying to do here? And just for context, what the executive, or what's labeled as the general department, includes office staff. So this is the executive director, the deputy port director, director of admin, some clerks, some accountants. There are 13 positions there, and the total for all of the expenses with insurance, salaries, et cetera, is $1,312,222.15. Over in the rescue boat department, there are 34 positions. Now, there are 3 vacancies, and the total over there is $3,434,118.82.
Mr. Chairman, the total for the rescue boats, the number you just stated, the 3 million, that's for both departments.
Okay, my
Go up
apologies.
one
So
line
it's-
item, and that's the total for
So it's $2,121,896.68. My apologies.
Yes.
Anyway, I mean, there's much more folks in there. Mr. Russo, those are folks that are out on the water, in the elements, doing the hard work. Are you trying to reduce their salaries as well?
They're not getting a raise. That's what he's doing.
Mr. Blank, were you in the meeting that we had this workshop?
I was. I'm just trying to clarify because it
Clarification is
seems
this,
that some
Blank.
folks are having a hard time following.
The clarification is that in that meeting, we had discussed merit increases, and while we were laying off approximately 80 employees, we didn't feel it was a good time to be giving merit increases to other employees of the government. And what we are trying to do here is cobble money together to make some transactions later in the budget to accommodate the ferry operation. That was the goal of the meeting. That was stated up front in the meeting, and all of these items were discussed during that meeting. And so now today is the budget hearing to try to implement those discussions that we had in that open meeting. So I don't know of anything that has changed since then. That is the goal today, and it was the goal of the meeting the other day. So the staff has cooperated and provided these amendments. We don't have copies of them, but we are being provided with the numbers to implement those actions that were worked on during the budget workshop meeting.
Thank you for clarifying. There are folks that are at home that have a hard time following along. We don't sound very clear with the masks on, et cetera. So thank you for clarifying the rhyme to the reason. Please continue, Shambro. My apologies. Oh, if there's Mr.
Yes,
Valley, come up.
Like you all, I've reviewed the budget entirely, and I've looked at it quite some time when I had an opportunity to go and visit with the staff months ago. What I don't see in here is an alignment of personnel like you're doing with the rest of the parish and cutting back jobs and taking back some of the incentives. What I suggested some time ago is you all look at bringing your salaries in line with the other employees that are in the rest of the parish, because you all are probably, that I looked at, probably 120, 123% higher than they are. I have not seen cutbacks in your salaries across the board, nor have I seen cutbacks in your personnel across the board. I'm not going to get into what you all have accomplished in the last year or two, or lack thereof, but I can tell you, I'm disappointed. And I hate to see the rest of the parish take the hits that we're going to be put on them, and you all haven't done anything to adjust your positions. That's all I have.
We need progress more than ever. Agreed. All right, moving along, please.
Okay, there's,
Were there any questions from the panel? No. All right. All right.
I'll give you the total reduction on the retirement as well, 516,105. The total reduction for that, 495,000 will be reduced by 12,000.
You gave us the 2 boat departments. Do you have y'all department, the administration and?
The administration, the last few figures I gave you, the 83,000, 6,000, and 12,000 is total across both departments. The office department salaries will be reduced by 21,000, taxes by 1,000, retirement by 5,000.
Ms. Williams, when those numbers change, can you show us exactly on the paper where those numbers are changing?
Yes, ma'am. And when the new books are issued to reflect all changes that are
Do you have a
amended.
copy of that just yet? No.
Not yet. And
Well, do you have copies of the amendments?
I do. I've supplied it to the secretary.
Okay, we might be able to get somebody to make copies for everyone. Do you have, is Barb here?
She's doing something in office.
Okay.
If y'all don't,
Can one
Well,
of the
do
council
you have somebody in your staff that can go make copies, please?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Can we let her go make the copies and hold a meeting up a minute to watch you make the copies?
Certainly, happy to do that. We'll take a 10-minute recess.
This is all of them, Shambro?
That's everything.
All right. Coming back from recess at exactly 10 a.m. All right, picking up where we left off, Shambrel, please.
Okay, if there aren't any more questions on the salary adjustments, we can move on to the financial services budget. Oh,
All right, I would like to offer,
Wait up, I got a question.
all right,
Come on. What's this going on?
So on this page, you just handed us that 930,000, that's the new,
that's the new total for the general operating.
and then the 1,364,000 is,
The new total for the rescue boats.
so that,
So if you add those two together,
2,294,000,
correct.
and the old one was 2,129,000?
No, the old one was 2,377,000. So it had an overall decrease of 83,000, which gives us a new total of 2,294,000.
Because on the paper we got in our book, it has for the rescue and the boat cruise, 2,121,000,000, I mean, 2,121,896. So if I took those two and added them together, it should be less than that, huh?
This is what you should reflect in your book, what I have up on the screen, 2,377,000 for the 2021 summary proposed budget.
2,375,000.
Here.
All right.
So the 2,377,000, which is the total budget for salaries and wages. This 2,377,000 will be reduced by $83,000 between both departments for a new total of $2,294,000 for both departments.
Mr. Valley?
Mr. Chairman, my earlier comment about reductions in salaries, are you all not contemplating doing any reductions of this department like you've done on the rest of all the departments in the parish? And let this just go? I mean, you're looking for additional revenue for the parish and all the way through. These people ought to be treated just like you treat everybody else in this parish.
Absolutely. We've combed through the budget as well as the roster of personnel over at the port, and we've looked at the flow charts, who responds to who, and have identified some positions.
I mean, what I'm hearing is something in the neighborhood of, what, $30,000, $40,000, $60,000 at the most out of a budget. We're looking at executive salaries in excess of $1.3 million in this thing. and y'all cut everybody else's executive salary. I think everybody needs to take a hit on this thing, just like everybody else in the parish.
We're getting to that.
What do you mean, today?
Just procedurally, we have to go, in a certain order. We could only take one bite at a time here.
I'm confused.
So-
What do you mean, one bite at a time, about what?
So procedurally, we have to handle this item first, and then when we're finished with this item, we'll handle some of those other items.
Okay,
So
but
we
the
will be
item
getting to
on the
that.
agenda right now is salaries.
Yes, not positions. So we'll be getting to those positions a little bit later on.
I'll wait till then.
Thank you.
So the amendment that was distributed, and we don't have any number on them, we need to put a number. I see one of them has everything on here, is that correct?
For that department, yes. We can cross out the operating and only put the personnel, and this will give you a summary. So do you want to only do the personnel adjustments?
Well, I was in the mode of doing the merit increase. So we were talking about the budget and the merit increase, and we were removing the merit increase. That's what the amendment was. But if you've got an amendment here that looks like it takes care of several things.
Less paperwork, then you can vote once on all of the adjustments.
Okay, but I want to make sure that at the end of the day, we accomplish what we intended.
Right. So these figures won't change. We can put a check mark if you're okay with the salaries, if you're okay with the taxes, if you're okay with the retirement. Once we get to the other adjustments, we can check those off. And once this list is cleared, then we can vote on the list.
Okay, so if I add these up for the salaries, the taxes, and the retirement, it comes to 28,000. Is that the total amount of the 4% merit increase
For the general department.
for the general department? General operating department, right, 28,000? 27,000. Okay. We have another amendment for the rest of the other one is 71,000, right?
The other department will be, yes, the 62 plus 5 plus an additional 7.
All right, so I'll offer those two amendments in globo.
Wait a minute, what is the $3,000 underneath the rescue boats? What is professional service added to it?
Well, that's in the operating budget. That's what Mr. Russo was saying. I had all of them typed on by department.
Right, so what is that added to it? So what is that professional service?
That is for the rescue boats, which uses some cleaning services for tanks and different operations at the dock site. But we're going to go over that amendment when we get to the operating section.
Right, but before we approve it, I wanted to know what I was voting on, so, thank you.
I don't think that's being approved.
The one general operating, that's just the boat crews, rescue crews?
You've talked, the 21,000 amendment,
Yep.
that is only the office, the administration general budget. The boat crews are being reduced by 62,000. If you look at the heading right on top, it'll give you the department and division. So we can remove the additional line items that pertain to the operating budget, and you all can just vote on just the salaries. I think that seems to be the easiest thing to do.
Okay, so back to the salaries. the merit increase totals 27,000 in the general operating and 74,000 in NERC votes.
Correct, for,
Okay. Offer the amendment.
Second.
Like to call a question?
Amendment's adopted 8-0.
Thank you.
Let's move on, man.
Moving along, please. Do you-
No. Right.
okay, page 3 of the summary proposed budget for 2021. We have total financial services. We did see a decrease from 2020 to 2021 in our group health insurance. No additional amendment will be needed. That was reflected in the proposed budget. I just wanted to make note of that as well. And the other note we wanted to make, we did have a minor increase in our liability insurance for 2021. And that summarizes any major changes we had from 2020 to 2021. And there will be, from the staff, no budget amendments proposed to this section. So if you want to discuss any of these line items, these numbers here that we have presented will be the figures for 2021. For a total, a total financial services budget of $6,377,907.
What page is that?
That will be on page 3.
Go back to that total.
Okay, so this total will be the 6,300,000. And in your books, this is where there was a reporting adjustment made. So here, let's see. The insurance for liability was added to this section. I don't believe you have that in your books. That's the 536,105. Also, the insurance deductible, 536,205, is added to this total as well. So in your books, those two line items were reported in the summary. It was just reported in a different department, in an incorrect category, which was on page 6 for those two figures.
Those two figures go on the 21 proposed budget line item under the 300,000.
What,
536,105 would come naturally between 519 and 537.
what happened for that to slip through?
We just added this in basically our reporting function in our accounting system. You can put the line items, basically you create it and build it, and it was placed in the incorrect department, in the incorrect budget category. So the insurance expenditures were being reported in operating services versus being reported in the financial services category. So it did not affect our bottom line because these figures were included in the bottom line numbers. It just affected the way it was being reported. And this revised report was emailed out to the entire board explaining these changes that were made to the presentation.
Thank you.
So when you say the bottom line, are you referring to the,
164,505. Yes, it's included in the revenues minus expenditures.
what about the total financial services bottom line item? Does that change? The 5,827,637?
Yes, on the screen here that I have reflects the correct amount of 6,377,000.
All right, Mr. Valley, you seem eager.
Mr. Chairman, one of the items on there shows a $100,000 reduction in posting employee benefits. What is that?
The post-employment benefit is a non-monetary expenditure that we are required to carry on our books due to a government accounting standard principle for post-employment benefits, basically. You have to carry your liability for your expenditures for retirees and things of that nature, post-employment.
How were you able to reduce it by 100,000?
Last year, the board actually changed the standards, and we had a significant increase last year due to those changes in the way that they required us to report it. So we're projecting that amount won't be as significant as it was because we adjusted it in 2019 for the new standards.
Second item I have, you all have an opportunity now in this category to look at the interagency fees. Now, yesterday, you all made significant changes in the fire department, and you made significant changes in the emergency EMT people. You need to adjust these categories in here where the parish gets reimbursed out of this fund to take care of those changes, additional costs that you're getting ready to incur.
Mr. Valley, the figures in this budget reflect the original budget, and so they are pretty close to being accurate.
As to the changes you made yesterday?
Correct.
They're not adjusted according to take care of those changes?
All right, let me say this. The figures that are in this budget were reflected from the previous year's accurate numbers. Now, they were not part of our reduction in the budget, therefore they did not reduce the intergovernment agency fee in their proposed budget. So when we bumped them back up, they became pretty relevant as far as the accurate number. Precisely not the accurate number, but what we do is we bill quarterly, and they reimburse us the accurate number.
That's fine. I know you know what you're doing with that part.
My point is that they are pretty accurate with this number. If those cuts would have maintained yesterday, then they would have been high. But they're not, because we went back and restored the firemen, and the EMS. So they're pretty accurate this number.
Those interagency fees, a specific percentage of
Yes.
something?
They are a percentage of the actual expenditures, and they're adjusted quarterly, and the budgeting item is pretty close to what it reflects as far as previous year. If that makes sense to you. Now, while we're on that subject, it's my intention at the right time to move and put an interagency fee here to operate the ferry in Point LaHash. And that's what we're working to.
Just in Point LaHash?
Excuse me?
Just in Point LaHash?
$1.5 million is what we need. To do more, we need a couple of million. Now, we've discussed $1.5 million. We hadn't discussed anything.
I understand you all have been talking about that for some time, but I still go back to my original premise on there. You're talking about possibly coming up later in this meeting, talking about positions. But I'm talking about specific salaries, bringing in line to what the parish is facing. The other employees are what they're facing. Some are facing a 20% reduction. You've told department heads over there, cut your staff and everything by 20% in salaries. I haven't heard anything like that for this group. They were well overpaid and overstaffed.
Paul, do you have any comments?
Shambrow.
Yes, sir.
Hey, the old one was 5,827,000, and the new one's 6,377,720.
Yes, so there was 3 items added or moved from one category to this category. That item was the insurance, fire, wind, collision for $393 and $393,150. We also added in the insurance deductible budget of $25,000. And then if we go down a couple more items on the screen that I have, other pilot revenue sharing expenditure was also in the incorrect category and moved into this category at $132,120. So your book reflects $5,827,637. And if you add in the $393,150 for insurance, $25,000 for deductible, $132,120 for pilot revenue, that will give you a total of $6,377,907, which is reflected here. Now, because we added these expenditures in here and increased this number due to the incorrect category, when we get to the operating services, you're going to see a reduction in that number for the exact amount.
I didn't catch the other one you had.
The revenue, yes, we hadn't got to that one, but yes, the pilot revenue was also placed in operating category and should have been in the financial services.
Thank you.
And the fire, wind, and collision insurance premium of $393 covers what? The boats, or what does that cover?
Yes, liability insurance for the departments, for the boat department. I'm not 100% sure what liability, if there's any included for any other department, do you know?
It'll be liability in general for every.
Liability in general for the company, yeah.
Okay?
No amendments, no questions on the figures presented for financial services. Okay. We can move on down to the operating services budget.
Certainly. Please.
Due to the reduction in revenues for 2021, the staff and the board took time to review the operating budget where a majority of our expenditures and activities take place. There were many cuts. As you can see, some are minor. They're not really significant, so I won't go through, we reduced it by 1,000, we reduced it by 2,000, but I just want to make note that we did make a lot of reductions where, we took into consideration that every dollar counts towards adjusting to the decrease in the revenues.
And the membership dues went up by 11,000?
Yes, and that was due to basically some of our expenditures were being recorded in an incorrect line item, which was sponsorships. We overall reduced the sponsorships, and we did increase the memberships to cover those that were being coded to the wrong line item.
And to make up that 55,000, you have a list of them?
I do not have it with me, but those were provided to the board. I do not remember all of the memberships by heart.
Now, we still have a significant burden on the budget in the form of the helicopter. Has it been considered to scrub that out of the budget?
The helicopter is included in this budget at a 50% cost, as it has in the previous years. There has been no changes to the helicopter operations.
Mr. Dirk, could you elaborate on how the helicopter is useful for us?
We entered into a 50/50 agreement with PPSO, as you know. That was prior to me being in the seat I'm in now. But we do use the helicopter. We reserve 2 days a week to do an overall overflight of the port. We normally only do that once a week and leave the other day in reserve for emergency cases. And then, of course, PPSO uses the bird for other PPSO activities as well. But the arrangement is 50/50, basically, on expense cost down to the pilot, fuel. And we were looking to move out of getting in the helicopter and getting into the drone business. We're in that process. We have grants moving forward with a drone. That would possibly give us a door to say that if we can operate with the drone. But unfortunately, with the new regs, federal regs, state regs, the drone program is not as cheap as it used to be. As a state agency to run the drone, you have to have a program, training, all these other kind of things that add up as well.
Sure.
So we're in the middle of looking at that.
And so the last time we talked about the helicopter, we talked about it being extended to probably August or so, because that's when the contract was up and that we were going to end the contract then. And so now we're not planning on ending the contract. Who actually flies in the helicopter twice a week?
It's going to be one of the marine inspectors on duty, sometimes myself as well, but I haven't flown in some time. But the supervisor on deck, as we call it, he will make that overall flight. By in doing that as well, the boats stay parked. So we save fuel on the boats for making the long harbor inspections by doing the helo does that inspection. So we park the boats when that day that helo is flying over.
And the purpose of that is to count the boats for the tariff?
Correct.
And it was
Verify.
my understanding that the pilots have a system now where they report the boats to the port.
We're starting to do that as well, as a backup. But we still have to do a physical security inspection because we receive the security fees. So we can't do it all. Mr. Russo, actually, we could actually look on boats like Google Earth or air traffic control. But we cannot physically do that and collect the tariffs and security fees if we're not moving the vessels and physically showing face and then making those.
So the 2 days that you run the helicopter, you don't run the boats?
That's correct. Correction, 1 day. 1 day a week we run it. We have another day, we call it in reserve in case something was to come up, some kind of incident. So we use 1 day a week, and that's not consistently every week because of scheduling with PPSO. So it's not always once.
There was some discussion about the salary. Did we straighten that up? Because I remember someone said that the guy didn't make that kind of money.
Yeah, I don't know if Shambrell followed up, but that's not the salary. I'll confirm that is not 50% of the salary. I think it would be safe if you wanted to do an amendment, Benny, I think it would be safe to say 50,000, because I believe the salaries are around 80,000, and then retirement and benefits or whatever. I think our cost share would probably be 50, not 75.
Right?
Take the words right out of my mouth. There you go.
So you have the amendment available?
$35,000?
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I was here at the meeting when this issue came up at one of the budget hearings about the expenses that we're incurring for this helicopter. And like you, Mr. Rousseau, I heard him say that we're going to cut this thing off at the end of August somewhere, and we're only going to fund it as the contract is going to expire. It would have savings. Also, watch you all put through a $13,000 expenditure to buy a drone. And you prefaced all this work that could be done by a drone. Now, all of a sudden, we're hearing another story. We're facing a hangar fee, a pilot fee, a fuel fee, and a usage fee. It's astronomical. I think somebody needs to regroup and determine whether or not the security fee we're getting is justifiable, that we have to have all the other expenses that go along with it. So somewhere along the line, how much is the security fee that we're collecting from the federal government? Anybody know?
We cut the security fees from the shippers.
Say again?
Part of the tariff we collect from the shippers. Now, how do we?
Yeah, but all that information is available. The other ports do it now by the GIS and everything else. You can tell what's coming in this river and where it's anchored and when it's coming in this river. There's a lot of data that's available now. I don't know. The first time I'm hearing you have to go physically look at it. I mean, you can look at it from the drone. You can look at it from the data that's received, et cetera. I mean, I've been up and down this river. I can tell you, I was in the business. I can tell you where everything is, when it's coming here, where it's
Mr. Valley,
going.
I've got a $5 app on my phone that tells you everything that's
Absolutely.
smoking on the river. I mean,
I
it's,
understand.
it's in your pocket, you
I don't know
know.
why we got to spend almost $200,000 for technology that's old.
Guess we don't need police on the streets either, then we just look at it on our phone.
I thought that was one of the reasons why we bought the tower. To put a camera up on the tower.
Yeah.
That'll cover a section of the river as well.
Well, I guess you see the direction we're trying to go is we're trying to make some amendments to make the budget more efficient. As I stated in earlier, the goal is to get to that number. So do you have an amendment that Mr. Black had mentioned the number?
I am preparing it.
Thank you very much.
How many
You
days a
said
week
to
is the
reduce it
sheriff?
from, I'm sorry, Richie, reduce it from 75 to 50?
That's what Mr. Black is saying, yes. Please.
How many days a week does the sheriff's office use the helicopter? The other 6?
I'm not aware of the days or what their program is, but they do house it and they basically run it and manage it. So I do not know what they fly, of course, call-outs, search and rescue, whatever they do. I'm not aware of that.
'Cause if we do 2 days a week, that ain't 50% of use.
I think it's on demand, Mark. I don't think they don't have a set schedule, from my understanding, on flying. I think it's like Donald just said, if it's search and rescue or levy and stuff. They do a lot of work for us too, on levy inspections, and things like that. So it's not just sheriff's office things, but I don't believe there's a set schedule. I think it's just on demand.
All right.
But I know GIS for us, I think Garrett Spears goes up with them. Donald, correct me if I'm wrong, but quite often to do the pre-inspections, post-inspections during storms and any other issues.
You know, there's no other tool like it, but if we could be operating as lean as possible, we need to be.
No, look, I agree. But I also agree that the drone platform is the way we need to be going and going in that direction. And, you know, we had this discussion with the port middle of last year, and I hope that, from my understanding, is that they're going in that direction to utilize that.
Yeah, it's much safer. It takes people out of harm's way, both, you know, in the air and on the ground. But you can't cover 75 miles in a sitting with it, though, either.
Well, I mean, you could cover, and I want to get into the nitty-gritty of it, but yeah, that drone can fly autonomously from Belchase to Venice, and you probably have 2 stops along the way for recharging, and do that autonomously, and then report back with any type of anomalies or whatever data you're looking for. It's pretty amazing technology, and you could do it relatively inexpensive.
Skynet. All right, moving on. I'm sorry, we need to. So I'd like would anybody like to offer this?
Offer.
Kognovich offers. Seconded by Arborough. I'd like to call a question. All right. 8 with 1 abstention. Oh, I'm sorry, with 1 absent. GUI is absent. All right, moving on, please, down the budget.
Okay, in the operating budget, we do have some proposed amendments. So I would like to discuss those. Everyone has had time to review the changes between, of course, the 2020 budget and the 2021 budget as far as the increases and decreases, so we can basically discuss the amendments that we are proposing here today. And I'll go to the total operating services line item, which could be found on page 8. Again, the books that were originally issued will reflect a total operating budget for 2021, operating services budget at $3,462,624. After the changes had been made regarding the insurance adjustments and the pilot adjustments that we discussed earlier, the actual operating services budget for 2021 is $2,912,354. I'll make note that we just did a $25,000 reduction to that amount for the professional services of the pilot. We also proposed a reduction to legal support in the total amount of $70,000, broken down by department for 2460. That reduction will be $46,500 for a new total of $73,500. And for the department 2468 land acquisition, legal support reduced by $23,500 for a new total of $51,500. With those two proposed amendments to those two departments, total legal support will have a total of $125,000.
Okay, now, I couldn't follow those lines. I'm on page 5, legal support general. The proposed budget is $195,000. That's the summary, correct?
Correct.
So that number with the amendments that you just told us, the two amendments, changed to 125.
Correct.
Total. Then to go into the details, what page are you going to?
So to discuss the details, we would have to go to the next tab. And
Well, you were just cutting line items just now. What line items? You were in the details when you were cutting the line items?
I broke it down by department, but yes, we can talk about the department adjustments in the detail section. Legal support is on page 4 of these details. This is the General Department, 2460, Legal Support General, line item 531.001. For 2021, there was a proposed budget of 120. We have an amendment for a decrease of $46,500. Which would give you a new total for the general department at $73,500.
Now, to get to the $73,500, how was that determined?
I did it based on proportion. We had a total budget of $195, and about, I think it was maybe 63% of that would have been allocated to general, and then the remaining percent would have been allocated to 2460. To make it simple, I took that $70,000 reduction and I just made it proportionate.
So it's $73,500 in legal support general.
Correct.
And then the next land,
And then your land acquisition, legal support details could be found on page 12 of the detail section. Page 12 of the details, yes.
Is that land acquisitions?
Yes, 2468, legal support had a budget of $75,000. We are proposing an amendment to that department, that division, of $23,500 for a new total of $51,500.
okay. And that is the extent of the legal fees in the entire budget, in all categories, that we will come back to $125,000. in the summary.
Correct.
And the purpose of these cuts is because I'm hoping that the direction of the port does not go into any more expenditures on land acquisitions without coming to the board and having a clear understanding of what we're going. In the past, we expended quite a bit of funds on attempts at land acquisition and exploring land acquisitions. And as a result of that, I would like to see us rein in that effort to be more in sync with what the majority of the board is interested in as far as attorney's fees. Now, that doesn't preclude you from going out and talking to landowners and exploring all you want to explore. But to start having legal fees mount to the total amount that has been expended to date, would like to be in sync with that. Having said that, I'll offer the amendments.
Second.
All right, the amendments have been offered by Commissioner Roussel and seconded by Koknovich. I'd like to call a question, please. All right. Measure passes 8 with GUI absent. Moving on.
Okay, we can go back to the summary section. And
Page.
I am,
Green under the yellow. It's that single page.
Yeah, professional services over there.
Professional service general.
All right. Moving along.
okay, moving along in the summary, if we go back to page 5, our next proposed amendment is to professional services general. The amendment we have proposed for professional services general totals a decrease of $109,000. So we originally proposed for professional services general a $219,000 budget. We want proposing an amendment, like I said, a decrease of $109,000, which will bring that total down to $110,000 for a total professional services budget. And now I will explain the different departments and how they will be affected by this total $109,000 amendment. For the general department, 2460 professional services general is to be decreased by $97,000 for a new total of $78,000. So to look at the details for the 2460 General Department, if you would like to take a look at that professional services budget, that will be in the details section on page 4. 2460 Professional Services, line item 532.001 will be reduced by $97,000 for a new total of $78,000.
Explanation on those expenditures of the 78,000?
Yes, so those details were also sent out as the projections for use of that $78,000. I know includes the year-end audit for the port, the financial audits, and a couple of other services. Do you remember, Paul? I apologize for my memory. Right, but he wants to know what the 78,000 was for, and all I can remember is pull up the email. I apologize. I left my laptop, so I don't have a lot of my details that I had prepared for this.
Okay.
But it was sent out in an email, so Paul can pull it up. The only one I can remember as far as general professional services that we had included in that was for the audit, and he'll give a couple of other examples what the 78,000 was allocated for.
Yeah, thank you. That's good because I realize that these were sent by emails. However, in the public setting, you know, the purpose of this public hearing is so the public can understand what we're going, and that's part of the transparency of the public hearing. And as you see, we do get questions, but we get more questions when we leave the budget hearing than we do when we are at the budget hearing, because people watch it on YouTube and they ask us, well, what is that for and what is this for? And if we can answer those questions for the YouTubers out there that are watching, because they are out there, it saves us a lot of time and helps the communication.
Yes, and again, I apologize for the YouTubers. I don't have my laptop with my digital documents trying to save on paper. Yeah.
Do you want to pull the 3,000 out of trophies and plaques?
On the what?
The trophies and plaques, that kind of thing, and then,
Mr. Chairman,
go ahead.
good evening. When I looked at this budget some time ago, and again the last couple of days, it's fat with personal service contracts, consultants, studies all the way through. And I guess from a practical standpoint, let me just take legal fees. It's been exorbitant legal fees. I think you've now talked, I heard today, it will be a cap of $125,000 for everything associated with doing business the next year with this deal. At one time, you talked about hiring an attorney to represent you all, that you all would be paid out of this budget, that would report to the council and oversee the operations and do whatever they needed to do. Where does that stand now? Y'all still thinking like that? Or are you going to cap it at 125 and have control over those lawyers?
If the question's to me, I think that the idea is still there to get an in-house attorney. However, at this time, it hasn't happened. And so the cap of 125 is set because of that's the cap that we set on the salary for our parish attorney. So I would expect them to live within that budget. I've explained to them that I'm not going to support any amendments in the mid-year to take another 125,000 or to expand that. And the point of my comments is to caution them to not use the attorneys except absolutely necessary to keep within that $125,000 cap. Now, you know, to have the parish have a port attorney in-house would be ideal. Yesterday we saved the entire legal department. My thought at one time was to have one of the parish attorneys do port work as well. However, that hasn't grown any legs. But in the light of keeping all four attorneys yesterday on the council side, I think it's worth discussing, because the lawyers that they have over there are duplicating efforts. And I'll give you an example. When one of the attorneys does the land acquisitions for the levies, he has to talk to the port attorney. So we get an invoice from the port attorney billing us to talk about the acquisition of property, and we get the employee working on the same subject matter when we're all really trying to build a levy.
I agree with you, and listening to yesterday's testimony about the legal department, et cetera, this is one parish in this department, and you all are one group, and it's the same entity that we're doing business across the board, and we need to have consolidations of some of these efforts so we don't have duplication that causes the greater expenses that we're doing. And I commend you in capping it, but also looking at it. The boards that I've served on in the past, the board itself has authority and generally hires legal counsel that reports directly to the board, and an auditor that reports directly to the board, so that you have full control over the operations and oversight of what you're doing. But I commend you where you're going, at 125. Now, some of the other expenses that I've seen are substantial are your consultant expenses, your outside contracts, and particularly your lobbyists that you all have hired and consultants. Are you all looking at that budget today?
It's in the budget. Everything that the port plans on
I
expending.
didn't see any direct reductions.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I think we ought to progress, and when that comes up, he can address those.
When you get to that line.
Yeah.
Right now, we're on professional services, and we're looking for an explanation on the 78,000 that's left in after the amendment if it's adopted.
And I have it. So we have, for the 78,000, we budgeted 40,000 for auditing, 15,000 for actuary services, 3,000 for other, which includes our, we have a service being provided by a company, on the tower property that provides lights, not lights, Rigneck?
The tower?
Yes, it's a communication.
You have to have lights.
The budget here.
And for aviation services, that's budgeted at about 3,000. And then there is a $20,000 budget in, due to discussions on receiving, different types of abstracts and documents regarding an admin building move for the port.
All right, thank you, Shambro.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yes, sir, Mr. Bartholomew. You have the floor.
I'm just talking about legal attorneys. The state provides statute, say the district attorney can provide legal service to all entities under this umbrella.
Could I chime in there? Actually,
pardon?
man, please chime in. I've actually talked to.
Wait, let me finish, then you can have it.
Yeah, but so the port.
Hold up.
Actually does.
No,
that. I agree with
come
you.
on now.
Go ahead.
Thank you. All I'm saying, by statute, it is a possibility that the district attorney can support this council and relative to the port and to the day-to-day operation government with some legal assistance at no cost, if that's what we're trying to save money on. That's just my opinion. Now you can have the floor, sir.
Oh, absolutely. I called different ports around the state, and down in Cameron Parish, that's exactly how they do it. All right. Okay, are
Okay.
there any amendments in this section?
Yes, she has the amendment.
Yes, so for professional services general 2468, it is going, line item 532.001 will be decreased by $97,000 for a new total of $78,000. And that's for the general department, 2460.
Second.
Offered by Roussel, seconded by Kognovich. Call a question? Are there any questions from the audience on this before we move? All right, any from the panel? Oh, Mr. Valley, please.
One of the items, if you could put that back up on the screen, I saw a study in there for $75,000 or $100,000. What is that?
That's further down. We haven't gotten to that yet.
Oh, I thought it was on the screen just now. Okay, I'll wait.
Yep. Oh, thank you.
That's what you got to address as you move forward.
All right. Measure passes 8 with GUI absent. All right, moving down, please.
Okay, there is an additional, we moved kind of quick on the professional services, but there is 2 additional amendments that will be made to the Rescue Boats Department for Professional Services General and also the Land Acquisition Department for Professional Services General. So for the Rescue Boats Professional Services General, we are asking for an increase of $3,000 to that line item.
Which one is that?
In the details, the professional services for the Rescue Boats Department can be found on page 8, line item 532.001. We originally proposed 4,000. We're asking for an increase of 3,000 for a new total of $7,000.
What is that for?
And that is for in 2020, the Rescue Boats Department uses professional services for water waste disposal, some grass cutting services, and miscellaneous use professional services such as waste for oil and gallons of waste. Donald, okay.
Should we have those broken out into individual line items?
I could. They're very minor. I mean, it's only 7,000, so we group it together. It's not a big, large line item. But in 2020, we used more than 4,000, so we're estimating our total cost for the year of 2020 will be about 7,000, and we won't. So we're asking just to have the same budget for 2021, I'm sorry.
All right, Mr. Durr?
Just wanted to elaborate a little further if you like. We have a waste water there at the dock. We have to pay somebody to come get the waste. So we have, like United, like the Porter-Can folks to come to empty that tank out. Then also waste all, same thing. We have a tank there. Yeah, we have to pay somebody. They used to come get it and actually pay you, but nowadays it's between the surcharge. They come get it, it's half water, half all type thing, but it's water out the bilge, so they discharge that as well. We do own grass cutting in-house there at the dock. The other fee Shambrell mentioned is most likely at the tower site, cutting the bush hogging there.
Got it. And they use that for hay, right? Down there at the tower?
No, it's not. It wasn't the right type of grass. Miss Patty had contacted me once about it, but it wasn't feasible.
Got it. Well, I could tell you, I probably speak for the board and all the water users here in Plaquemines Parish that we appreciate y'all not dumping the waste right next to the municipal water intake.
Hey, Roger.
Thank y'all. How does the board feel about this? Any questions from the board? Any questions from the audience on the $3,000 increase to professional services? All right.
There will also be a decrease in 2468 if y'all are allowed to do that amendment in addition to the 3,000.
468.
Okay, so on page 12 of the details, you will find the Land Acquisition Department. We have a Professional Services General 532.001 total budget proposed for 2021 of 40,000. We are going to do a decrease of 15,000 for a new total of 25,000.
What is the 25,000 used for?
Additional cut.
This department is used for any land acquisition activity that the port basically takes part in that would be aside from the normal operations. So if any additional abstracts or services in that matter pertaining to a land acquisition would be needed, this is the budget that they will use for such.
Well, is that actually needed at this time? I mean, I'm, remembering the comments that I made a few minutes ago about land acquisitions.
Mr. Chairman?
Oh, please, by all means, Mr. Matthews.
So, yeah, and like Mr. Russell was saying, based on his comments, in that same budget meeting with Mr. Russell, Ms. Newberry, Mr. Kognovich, and Mr. Black, there was discussion about whatever opportunities with the port and where we operate or looking into. Maybe Mr. Black can speak to it more, but we wanted to maintain in the budget any money for any way that you guys wanted to look into where the port would operate regarding the current building we're in, or does that ring a bell, Mr. Black?
Yeah, I think we had a discussion. on taking, vacating, remember this conversation? Vacating, vacating the Popich building, which I think you guys spend, it's in the budget, X amount of money, and then, if we had the assessor and the clerk, I think relocate to Popich.
But whatever that discussion was.
And then you guys would basically purchase that property on the riverfront, from the port.
So based on this discussion, when we cut it, we were going to zero it out. But since you guys were having that discussion, we wanted to make a point to leave that in if y'all wanted to look into that further.
Yeah, I apologize. I never actually followed up on it.
Okay.
But I mean,
That was the only reason why we
had
kept
the
it in.
discussion now. But I mean, this was basically the deal not the deal, but what we were talking about
Right.
in that room was,
We're just,
we're just talking. I mean, so we can talk about it now if you want.
I was never part of the discussion, so I'd like to hear.
No, you were
No,
there.
you were there, sir.
You were there.
You were there, sir.
All I
yeah.
said, it wasn't like a big discussion.
No, it
All I
wasn't.
said was,
Mentioned something about if they move to that.
It was in
Yeah, right,
passing.
right.
Well, if I may, it was in passing, and so when we were looking at cutting that item, I remembered that conversation. So I said, well, let's keep at least something in there.
yeah, I just,
If, but
basically.
if y'all want to zero it out, I mean, by all means. But we just tried to keep it in based on the discussion you guys were having.
The
So
point of
it's
it
your
for the
call.
rest of the board, for the public to kind of know where I was going with, is that, as we talked with the clerk yesterday, they obviously have issues with their building, et cetera, would be to vacate the clerk and the assessor, move them into the Popich building and have that fully occupied, both the second and third floor. That would take care of the clerk and the assessor. And then we'd have to find a place, obviously, for the port, and the port pays $60-something thousand a year in rent at that building. Instead of investing in rent every year from the parish, just actually purchase that entire piece of property on that riverfront from the parish. So then we get an immediate revenue income of whatever that appraises for, maybe $1.5 $2 million, but whatever it is, then the port would just do with that site whatever they want to do with it. I mean, they'd have office space there available, obviously, either at the tomato shed or the annex building, whatever they choose to do, and then,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm just bringing it up, Benny, just for discussion. I mean, it's not,
I know, but this is the first I hear about it.
no, we talked about it.
No one told me that the port was interested in buying the port.
I never said they were interested. I said it's just an idea.
Let me be clear. The port staff that was not part of the discussion. The port staff was in the room where Ms. Newberry, Mr. Kognovich, Mr. Russell, and Mr. Black were discussing it. It was very quick. It didn't last more than a minute. So when we were looking at going back over the budget and what to cut, we were going to zero that item out. But based on that conversation, I said, well, let's just leave that in just in case they want to bring that up again. Now, if you guys want to zero it out, please, by all means. But that was our mindset about just dropping it to 15,
Just an idea,
from 15,000.
just to talk about.
But it may not be that specific idea, it may be something else. But if y'all want to zero it out now, and then we, later on, if there's something comes up, then just do that.
To give ourselves some options, I think maybe we should leave it in for now. And if we get to the end of the budget hearing and we do need a few more dollars, I would hate to just cut those options off right now, early in the day. But that's just my opinion.
The only problem with that is that this is so far down the line that, another hour or two is not going to make a difference about where they're going to get the money to build a new building, and we're going to sell them the property and all of that. I mean, if that conversation was had, that minute that you talked about, I didn't hear it, so I must
He
have
said something, and it wasn't, I don't think it lasted a minute. He said something about the tomato shed.
Yeah, it was very quick. All it was saying, hey, an idea would be to move clerk and assessor to Popich, stop having them pay rent. It deals with the clerk and assessor. That whole facility becomes vacant. Port buys it. We get the actual cash money value for it immediately to PPG to use to fill a gap in this budget, and then they have a building and land. That was it. I mean, that's probably the length of the conversation, honestly.
Okay.
Mr. Henry, please.
Yeah, I think you should leave it in there. I think it's a good deal. You can use the land, Colonel. It's a good facility, put you on the ups.
Oh, you know what? Also, Benny, you did, because you brought up whether or not we own the Batcher on the river. Because we talked about moving, instead of docking the boat, that's how it started. We talked about docking the boat by the intake, like we just talked about, and moving the dock north. So if that property includes the Batcher, then we killed two birds, then we can stop leasing the dock where we have it on the south end and just move the dock on the north side of the ferry ramp.
Yeah, I remember that conversation, but I don't
Yeah.
remember anything about the.
Yeah, it was all together. That's how I got brought
It was
up.
all together in somebody's mind. It wasn't in my mind. My idea was moving the dock from the south side of the water plant to the north side. That's the only part of the conversation I remember. Nothing about the port going to the tomato shed and all of that. Y'all, you know, that's might something that link between y'all, but
It was quick.
yeah, obviously it was.
Yeah, I would like to move on, but I mean, given that the circumstances have changed over there with the damage to the buildings, I mean, maybe we should leave those options open within the budget here. And I'm for that. And if we get to the end of the hearing and we need to find a few more dollars, we know where to go, but we're not going to be able to turn left or right later in the year if we would like to make a move like that. So, all right, Shambrell, are we set to move along, please?
Okay. So 2468, professional services general, decreased by 15,000 for a new total of 25,000. You can find those details on page 12. So that is, we have two amendments to the professional services, one for the rescue boats, one for the land acquisition. Rescue boats are being increased by 3,000 and land acquisition is being decreased by 15,000.
Like to offer? Anybody second? Seconded by Vice Chairwoman Newberry. All right. Any questions from the floor? Mr. Valley?
I don't know if it's time now, but I'm looking up on the agenda. $50,000 remaining in a study allocation. Is that now?
Yes. Yes. Right now, we're on the professional services general. Yes.
Keep asking.
Page 5.
Okay, I'd like to call a question. Oh, should we wait for Ms. Toops to give that? All right. Oh, Mr. Black, too. There you go. All right. And the measure passes with Arbor away from the table and GUI absent. All right, moving on, please.
Okay. Right below professional services general, we will find professional services study in the summary here for a line, for a 2021 budget of $50,000. The port proposes an amendment to reduce that line item by $50,000 for a new total of $0.
All right.
Second.
Offered and seconded by Mrs. Newberry. All right, call a question, please. Mr. Valley, do you have any questions about this study? Okay, I mean, you know, we don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot for later, though. All right, again, passes with everybody at the table voting yes. Arbor away, GUI absent. Moving along.
Okay, next proposed amendment will be to the line item for consulting, marketing, slash PR, line item 531.520, 2021 proposed budget reflected a $15,000 budget. We proposed an amendment to reduce that line item by $15,000 for a new total of $0.
All right, I'll offer.
Is that marketing, you said?
Second.
Yes, ma'am, consulting, marketing, slash PR.
Offered by Blink, seconded by Kognovich. Any questions from the audience? Mr. Valley, please.
I understand. This is one I asked before. Is this the same one that the newspaper guy had, contract with Parrish?
I defer to Parish, the board staff on this one.
This is the line item where such expenses would be coded not necessarily the entire line item is devoted to marketing. We're not limited to only using that contract for marketing.
I'm not talking about marketing. At one time, I questioned you all at one of the committee hearings that there was a $40,000, $50,000 contract.
Yes, that was a consulting marketing contract for $40,000.
Who was that with?
That was with Dale Benoit.
And that's
Or
no
no,
longer in
yes.
existence. It's a zero contract now?
We have a zero line item for that expenditure.
Okay.
So we have no funds to fund the contract that we currently have.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, call a question, please. All here voting in favor? Moving along, please.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, yeah, sure. Mr.
Professional
Dunn?
Service Grant Administration. Did we talk about that the other day?
I do believe we did. That is the budget set aside for all of our grant administration for our port security grants, and there are some funds available within the grants to cover some of those expenses at a 75-25% match.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, moving down the agenda, please.
Did we, on page 4, did we talk about the professional services procurement, the $100,000, which was the 100% increase?
We did not. We only talked about the amendments that were being made to the proposed budget that has been provided. But if you want to talk about the details as to what that prescribes to, this past previous year, we entered into a contract for some services to be provided to improve our procurement and prepare for the port's future and growth. And this is the budget for that contract remaining. We did not, in 2020, we basically had it included in professional services general. And what I've done here was basically pull that out. So it's more transparent as to what is particularly being served, what is particularly being contributed to that project. So that way, when we get our monthly financial reports and our meetings, you can clearly see what's being allocated to procurement.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Consultant.
And this is the meeting that y'all wanted to have very short notice last Monday, correct? Let's talk about that particular, the kickoff for that project.
Yes, we are we're making progress, and we wanted to provide the chair and vice chair with an update on the project. Yes.
My schedule is so tight, I almost need to know about those types of things at least a week in advance to fit them in. When I hear about it the same morning, I just can't attend something like that.
So that meeting was specifically for the executive staff.
Richie,
only.
you wasn't at the meeting, you wasn't there, so they mentioned something about a meeting that afternoon, and I asked to be involved, and I told them to give you the common courtesy of inviting you. So I didn't have to say anything to you, but we gave you the common courtesy. But you not showing up has nothing to do with it. It's just you couldn't attend it or be part of it. That's fine.
What I'm getting at is I just,
Now, I know what you're getting at. They could at least let us know a week in advance that they were having that meeting. But like I said, my ear happened to catch a conversation they were having of what was going on for that day.
Yeah, so it initially was not earmarked for chair and vice chair. It was earmarked for the executive staff, and Ms. Newberry requested to be a part of it. So we extended that invitation to you as well.
and thank you for doing that. In order to stay on top of things, it's helpful to know about them with a reasonable heads up.
Was that on the calendar? We're talking about that. So that should have been on the calendar, and then if we follow the calendar, then we would have known. So
Just to clarify, once again, it was just for the executive staff. At the standard Monday prior to a board meeting, we have a meeting with the chair and vice chair where we provide updates. It was that at that meeting, we provided an update. I know you were not able to attend that particular meeting. In that meeting, as we were providing updates on what we were doing, we had mentioned that we had a meeting a few hours later with our executive staff and the procurement team. And then that's when Ms. Trudy said, oh, if I could be on it, I would love to. And we said, well, no problem. And then we called you immediately to see if you wanted to come as well. But the plan is to first have a meeting with just the executive staff and the procurement team. The next step was then to take that momentum and then meet with the board on updates of how the executive team was working together. So that's why that went the way it did, but it was never intended for it to be a situation where we were calling at the last minute for a meeting you were supposed to be in. It was only supposed to be for the executive staff. Or it was on the calendar.
Include us from the beginning.
Well, it's a process, sir. That's what I'm saying. So the next step was then after we worked with our staff to say, this is what we're doing, this is how we're going to do it. We're working to have buy-in with the board, then taking it to our chair, vice chair, and then the rest of the board.
You wouldn't want to have, I mean, the elected board members, the elected chair and vice chair, knowing about and participating in it from the very beginning when you set the meeting?
The meeting was specifically for the executive staff. The next step was then to bring in the board, because there is a process that we've been working on with the procurement team, and that was the next step in the process, and then we would update the board. That was the process we were working on. I don't know what else to say.
Is there any way you guys can come up, maybe get some office space for Mr. Blank at the Popage Building if he wants to?
We have an office.
I mean, yeah, just work from there.
I think the better idea would just be to make sure that the calendar is explicit enough to know what meetings are what and the subject matter of the meeting, other than just put staff meeting. And that way, individual members could call in and ask about it if they're not invited. So again, going back to the transparency of the calendar, which has always been an issue for me, I think that more detail on the calendar would help.
Mr. Valley, please.
I would assume it'd be on the calendar.
Okay, let me just deal with this. It was on the calendar, the executive calendar, and it stated procurement kickoff meeting with department heads. It's on the executive calendar. When anything is put on the executive calendar, it's put on real time, which Ms. Sherman handles. I just want to make that very clear. It was on the executive calendar and stated procurement kickoff with department heads.
What was the date?
Last Monday.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Roussel brought up the $100,000 procurement allocation that was in the budget. I didn't see any expenditures at all in this calendar year, 2020, to date, and I believe there was a lot of discussion about utilizing the parish's staff and adopting their procurement policy rather than us go through expending and going out for outside bids and contracts to hire a service to do this. And in today's time, when we're looking to save money, I think it still could be done and eliminate that money to be spent for outside contractors.
You know, we lost that vote at this table a few months back. My colleagues decided that was the direction they wanted to take. And
Well, you may want to reconsider it and unfund it, which is an idea that you all can look at some budget cuts across the board, because you're looking for $1.5 million, and your staff and the parish itself has ample attorneys, ample people that's put together procurement policies before, and they haven't looked at securing one from the Port of New Orleans. So we're duplicating all these efforts. The second item that I want to discuss that's up on the board is your consultants and maybe your lobbyists. Is that up here now for discussion in your budget? It's a line item or two around
for
there.
this particular item, correct?
I am complete with amendments as far as any changes to this, to the budget.
Well, there's a reduction of $90,000.
1 second, y'all. I'm sorry. Just a point of order.
Take a
We've got
5-minute recess.
we've got a meeting going on back here.
We got a 5-minute recess going on, too.
Could we just have a little bit of respect for the process
Mr.
here?
Chairman, I request a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
We're going to break for 5 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Mr. Valley,
What you cooking today? Mr. Black, what are you cooking for lunch today?
Mr. Black,
Chimichurri.
all microphones are live and we are recording.
all right. I'd like to call us back from recess at 11:32. All right. Shambro, picking up where we left off.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me, I was asking questions. I wasn't finished when you all
My
decided to go
apologies,
on break.
Mr. Valley.
Thank you.
Please continue.
My question was about the lobbyist fees. And I see we're reducing that by what, $90,000? but we're still keeping $94,000 in the budget. And as I understood, there was some talk years ago about combining the lobbyists for the parish and for, as one entity that would do this. And you have an opportunity to look at that now.
We did, the parish's lobbyist is cut.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you.
Hold on one second, y'all. If y'all could please cue in when y'all would like to speak, I'd just like to maintain a little bit of order here. All right. And I do want to preface this conversation by saying that I cannot vote on that particular item due to a conflict of interest. So, Mr. Black, please.
Thank you. From my understanding in talking to the president is that in finance, going through the budget, is that the lobbying contract or line item there was deleted from the budget, I believe, for PPG. So it's going to be really up to the port, whoever we decide to hire as a lobbyist for both DC and in the state, kind of work on behalf of both. And I think Sandy has always agreed to that.
So you're now talking about that the port would pay for the lobbyists for the parish?
I think it's mutually beneficial.
I agree. We need one.
Yeah. So the port would be paying for the lobbyists. The lobbyists would be lobbying on behalf of the port, but it would be mutually beneficial for the parish as well.
You know, the things that I've looked at with lobbyists over the years, and I've hired a lot of them, they have to be uniform into the entire perspective of where we're going with the parish and its overall plan everywhere, not just this. Because we wouldn't have faced the bridge toll that we're facing if we had the same lobbyist. We would face the highways that we need, the infrastructure that we need, and the port. But somewhere along the lines, you all as a council should hire that person and dictate the orders to the lobbyists as what we're doing.
Yeah, I think there needs to be some better communication, which is why we've had a discussion up here about our existing lobbyist who's been hired with the port about canceling that contract and going in a different direction.
I mean, we've seen a major change in the president of this country.
Well, yeah, that takes-
change from the
that takes
Democrat to
account.
Republican
Yeah,
party,
that takes
and everywhere through them. We got to determine who's lobbyists we.
That takes an account as well, and we had the same discussion about, which firm would be more beneficial to us based on the political atmosphere. And, I could say that Mr. Helmers, he's here, he works pretty closely with the port on issues that our lobbyists are involved in already. So that group is pretty much in the loop on the major legislative issues that we're looking into.
The thing, and Mr. Black, you and I know about everything that's going on in the river. The river is just not Plaquemine Parish. It's not just Orleans Parish or Baton Rouge. It is the river. When I travel all over the world calling on people to come into this port, when they get in the mouth of the river, they think of the Port of New Orleans as the mouth of the river to Baton Rouge, everything along that line. And we ought to be working with all the other groups in this side, the lobbyists.
I think Sandy works quite well with Big River Coalition and other groups like that. And we just talked about, I think Benny went on a trip to D.C. and you have folks like Venice Port Complex there as well, doing their own thing. So there is a collaboration of a lot of folks who are getting involved in these discussions. So yeah, no, I agree with you, but.
I mean, you're all looking for $1.5 million more money for the port, for the ferries and all, but I think you need to consolidate your efforts by merging this thing back into the parish in one entity under and not duplication of efforts where you're going.
I got a question. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir, Mr. Henry.
Yes, the 94,000, is that strictly for the lobbyists?
It's for two lobbyists, one for federal, Washington DC and one for.
And one for the state?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right.
And while we're on that subject, I don't know what the contracts say, but in order to start fresh, I would zero out the item, and that would cancel 2 contracts because of no funding, and then we can come back after the first of the year and appropriate money for whatever lobbyists we decide to hire.
Mr. Bartholomew?
I cancel out.
Mr. Russo?
Yes, I'd like to offer that amendment to zero out the lobbyist budget, which would cancel the contracts and allow us to come back in January or February and start fresh.
All right. So offered by Roussel,
Second.
seconded by Cognovich. And just a reminder, I'm not going to be voting on this due to a potential conflict. Please, like to call a question?
I have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
Are you guys going to notify the lobbying firms of this taking place? All right, when you do, don't call me, you know? All right? You don't talk, yeah.
It's a budgetary item.
Yeah.
All right. All right, the vote passes with an abstention from Bartholomew and from Blink. Rest present voting in favor. Moving along.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, Shambro, we might need to just make a mental note that if there is an intention of putting back some funding for that, we need to make a mental note to have that set aside as we go through the budget.
Yes, I would, we would have to appropriate funds upon the execution and adoption of new contracts.
All right, moving down the agenda, please.
Okay. If that concludes any amendments that the port has on the operating services, and if there aren't any other questions or amendments for the operating services, that would conclude for that section of the budget.
There is a question, you may have explained this to you, but on page 5 of the detail, a professional service study, another 50,000. It was reduced from 75. I was curious to know what that would be for.
On page 5, the professional services study for 2021, you're talking of the 50,000?
Correct.
That was reduced. We did an amendment to reduce that to 0.
Okay, it's already zeroed.
Yes, that one's already zeroed.
Mr. Jim,
Oh, please, Mr. Valley.
under the categories that you were going through just now, you had cybersecurity and some consulting and cameras. There was huge amounts of money. And I guess I want to know where you're going to put these cameras and all. And possibly, can you afford to put these cameras and expand out to our boats and harbors to help them and assist them with what's going on out there? Because we have major problems. If we don't have personnel, we need somebody to watch what's going on in these boats and harbors, particularly with the oil problems that y'all have in the trash and debris. You can record it, see who it is, and find them. Can you all expand that out? Can you use the money for those cameras?
I think that's an excellent idea, Mr. Valley. Port staff.
Those cameras have the reach.
You got a lot of money.
Especially the Empire and Venice harbors. There's a lot of oil.
If they have the reach, we'll look into it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on operating? Okay, moving right along, we'll move to the total capital outlay budget.
Which page?
This will be on page 8.
Thank you.
A majority of expenditures and changes in this budget was due to the receipt of port security grants. We have a number of different equipment and property that has been awarded through those grants and budgeted. We do not have any proposed amendments for this category, and we're open to questions for it.
Which tower are we apparently leasing for $10,000 annually?
It's a tower located in Buras.
The contract will be ending, and we're looking to move those cameras.
Okay.
At the boat harbor?
And
One at the boat harbor?
Under the Port Security Grant Program that we receive these grants from, it has to pertain to the river, but it doesn't mean we can't reach your boat over. So we'll have to look at that, if we can turn and put one to reach in there and view that as well.
I didn't know if it was the tower right there at the harbor or,
No, it's one a little bit south of there. I didn't sign the contract. I wasn't involved with that when that happened. When the first cameras came online back in 2012 on the river. So we're redoing some of those cameras, eliminating some, and we're also including ferry landings. Ferry landings already got new cameras as well as we speak right now.
Mr. Jarrett, those cameras weren't put at the Point de la Hache ferry landing, were they?
Not yet.
Okay.
We have new ones for those as well.
It may make sense to wait that out a little
For
bit.
construction, right,
Exactly.
that's correct.
Okay. I was just kind of curious about which tower. I did notice that there's several options in Buras, and maybe there could be some cost savings there if we reached out to some of those other tower owners. I did notice some cameras over there on the cell phone tower that's over the levee at the Buras Boat Harbor. It does seem a little further away from the river compared to some of the other options. It's actually the furthest from the river.
Josh, that's correct. We are looking at, with y'all's blessing, as actually moving those cameras and put them on the Buras Water Tower, which is in close proximity to the river.
Got it. And that could just be an interagency transfer. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay, so if that concludes the discussion and any questions we have on capital outlay budget, that would include our summary.
Brow?
Yes.
I have a question. And I don't know if I just missed the conversation or what, but underneath the property dock, we added 750,000 at capital outlay. What is that for again?
That was a round 2020 grant that has been awarded to us pertaining to,
Those barges that we were discussing?
yes, ma'am.
And that's, to clarify, that's the security barge?
That's correct. There's two separate grants. One is for the barge itself, and the other one is for the actual dock. As we discussed before, the Corps engineers' rules have changed. We were going to spud a barge there and do it the cheapest way possible. You no longer can do that under the U.S. Corps regs. So they have to put dolphins out there in the gangway like you've already seen. So I was able to get a grant for $750,000, which would pretty much cover that end of it. So both, between the two grants, we should be able to get that dock established.
the other grant was the 650 one that's in here?
There's a grant for $650,000 in there. We put that grant in and applied for it in case we were going to take possession or do more with the Pope's building. So that was security grant I put in. If we're not moving that direction, that grant will just go away. We won't be able to utilize it. We can't use these grants on property that we don't own. So we can't lease from you guys and put infrastructure into it. The grant won't allow you to do that.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Any other questions from the table? How about the audience? All right. I'd like to offer this. And Mrs. Newberry, like to second? To operate.
What do you offer?
Is there any amendments for this? No. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Trudy, please. Oh, okay. All right. Moving along.
Okay, so with all of the amendments, I've totaled those up, and we had a total reduction of $464,000. So that would reduce our total expenditures that we originally proposed here at $12,436,261 to a total expenditure of $11,972,261.
The, all right. Are there any questions? All right, moving along. Ms. Russo?
Oh, wait and see what they have.
Okay.
So the summary for the 2020 original budget, which is the first page in the summary tab, will be adjusted to reflect all amendments that have been presented today and reissued after the beginning of the year. So if we continue on, our next section of the proposed budget would be the detailed revenues and expenditures. We've basically kind of went back and forth between the summary and details while discussing any amendments, changes, or whenever we had questions. So there's no need to go through the detailed revenue and expenditures unless there's any questions.
Mr. Henry, please.
Your revenues that you propose for the tariff, you expecting an increase in that, or?
No, sir.
I know with COVID, it might be on the low end, but I was just asking, that's all.
No, sir, we did not expect for 2021 to have an increase in tariff revenues. 2020, due to the pandemic, we have seen decreases, and we projected 2021 in accordance with 2020's activity in effect.
Okay, thank you.
On talking about tariffs, Paul, at one time you mentioned about the increase on the river. Have you come to a conclusion on that, or where we are with that?
Long-term, we'd like to work with University of New Orleans Transportation Institute to review our tariffs. I think during this time with the pandemic, we've seen a significant decrease in ship calls. So working those numbers out right now wouldn't necessarily be appropriate, but I'm looking long-term to work with United in 2021.
Thank you.
Paul, could you say the name of the institute at UNO?
University of New Orleans Transportation Institute.
Thank you.
I have a couple of questions on operating service and supplies.
What page?
Page 3.
Of the details?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Operating services membership dues went up 15,000.
Yes, sir. So we spoke about those earlier. There was a couple memberships. There were 2 memberships that had been being coded into sponsorships that were once more inspected, determined to be an actual membership and not a sponsorship. So due to those 2 items, our overall membership expense increased. So that move was due to those 2 items. Now, the sponsorships, where the 2 items were being originally budgeted, could be found on page 5. If you flip over a couple of more pages, and as you'll see, it's actually should be the last item on that page. That line item was reduced by 15,000. So it was a net of a $4,000 decrease overall.
Could you name some of those organizations that we are in fact members of?
I think I have it. You can cover it. Yeah.
So memberships include American Society of Civil Engineers, LANIGP, which is
It's a Louisiana organization for procurement.
okay, WBIA, Society for Human Resource Management. We have a Society of Louisiana CPAs, Inland Rivers, Ports and Terminals, Inc., Jefferson Chamber of Commerce, Big River Coalition, Government Finance Officers Association, Gulf Ports Association. Let's see here.
Which are the most advantageous?
Border Trade, Memphis World Trade, PAL, LAMA, AAPA, so all the port memberships.
All right. Which do you find to be the most advantageous to be members of? I know they all have their benefits, but which has helped the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District the most?
I would say the maritime and business organizations.
She sent this over the other day, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so I think you sent it to everyone, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think that was last week. So if you check your email from Shimbrel, she sent over a list of our members, who we're members with.
Sure, I'm just doing it for the public's benefit.
No, I'm just
I
letting
got
y'all
that.
know, just anybody who hasn't come across it, that's all.
And then on page 4, professional service procurement, $100,000.
Yes, so that is for the procurement project and contract that we currently have that we adopted in 2020. And as I mentioned earlier, that is a new line item. In the past, we've used professional service general and kind of just put those contracts within that line item. So this year, what I did was basically pull that out so that we can clearly see exactly what was being contributed to that project on a monthly basis. Again, these line items will appear in the monthly budget performance report that I provide to you each month. So now, in 2020, you'll be able to monitor that exact expense month by month.
All right, moving back to the item that we just saw, I just want to remind my colleagues, please cue in to where we could manage the meeting effectively and get some things done. I would like to scrub a little bit out of the membership dues portion. Can we find it, can I task the staff with pulling 15,000 out of that budget to reduce the budget from 55 on going on down? Mr. Black, please.
Yeah. You know, we just had this conversation, Mr. Valley was up here. I want to just make sure that you're very cautious when you start cutting trade associations, other firms, because it's really those collaborations that we talked about that makes good things happen for us. So I'm not sure why we want to nickel and dime on this particular line item. I think every one of these efforts are worth the money we spend on it. And I'll leave it at that.
I hear what you're saying. Thank you very much. I just haven't seen any construction yet, so I haven't seen that help translate to jobs on the ground for, folks working here in Plaquemines. Mrs. Newberry.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with Mr. Black, and as we said earlier, not only benefits the port, it also benefits the parish. So that's another way of us saving money on the parish side.
All right, if there's no appetite for it from my colleagues, I'll leave it. Mr. Russo?
You may have answered this question earlier on page 8.
Got to cue in. Give me the mic.
Go ahead.
Am I on? On page 8, your professional service, planning and engineering services, the $40,000. Did you already answer that? I got question marks written on my note, on my book here.
On page 8.
Rescue boats, under
Oh,
rescue.
I'm sorry. No, we did not discuss the professional services, the planning and engineering for that. That line item is contributed to the rescue boats department for dockage and engineering pertaining to the new location. If I'm not mistaken, okay.
You might want to get some spell check software as well.
I'm sorry.
Mr. Valley?
Just want to respond to Mr. Black, if you don't mind, Bill. You get into my specialty. My specialty in the banking business was taking over problem companies and looking at the resources, the personnel, and the market, what we could do to bring it back to health and to sell it. As trivial as it may be, we looked at everything from increasing revenue and decreasing expenses, simple operations of any business. In doing so, we looked at every line item of every expenditure, as trivial as it may be, to what publications we were spending money for, what emails were sent to whom and why they should be sent, and the duplication of time and efforts. all the way through these things that you're looking at. Some of these memberships are for being an association or something. Some don't produce any real efforts. They're great to belong to, and a lot of people do it. But somewhere along the lines, you got to cut back. And you all are doing a pretty good job of it so far, but you really haven't got into the trenches and looking at every line item that's there. Is it necessary to the goals of what we're trying to do with this port and comparable to what's going on with the parish and its other entities? So I ask you to relook at some of this stuff.
Thank you, Mr. Valley. I have a lot of respect for these organizations. In order to save the ferry, though, we might have to cut some of them. Are there any other questions from my colleagues? Mr. Russo, you're in the queue.
I'm going to stay in the queue.
All right, Mr. Black.
Yeah, Mr. Valley, just to answer your question, well, you're in my wheelhouse too. And this is in my wheelhouse. So you said this is in your wheelhouse. This is right up your alley. Well, it's right up mine as well. This is what I do for a living. And I'm telling you that I've looked at these and their necessity to not only the operations of this port and the progress of the port, but also of the parish. We talked about collaboration and those things, and I think that these things are too critical to cut at this time to save a couple bucks when, in the long run, they'll be essential to progress. And I understand Mr. Blank's comments about not seeing anything built yet, and I do have some frustrations at times with that, but I also sit back and look at the reality that we're not building, a Domino's Pizza on the corner of 23 and Barrier Road. We're actually building a multi-billion-dollar facility, whether it be a terminal for LNG or actually a port terminal.
Well, first off, to answer your question, I have not looked at the line items of those memberships at all, other than in a general scope that I responded to you on. And as far as looking at the results of what's going on, like us, me, and a few other people, we haven't seen any results of what's going on with the port. There's a lot of money being spent. The money belongs to the parish. And we're looking for ways to save money, looking for $1.5 million. And I welcome the global venture deal. I hope to God other deals can come about. But as I said before, a lot of this is pie in the sky.
All right.
And let me just say, the comparison to Domino's is unfair because they make great pizza. And they deliver pizza throughout this parish. And I love their pizza.
Except here.
You buying lunch for all of us today?
And the great thing about it too is they have a calendar set up where you know which specials are which days.
Exactly.
You got to learn your lesson.
That would be great. So let me ask you this: where are we at with the I call it the unreserved, undesignated fund balance that we are looking to draw off of $1.5 million bucks?
After the proposed amendments that I have, and I'm doing all of this by math, so to double check myself, I'm currently at $2,110,621. $2,110,621. That's the unreserved.
At this time, I'd like to make an amendment to the intergovernmental service charge, new line item for $1.5 million for the operation of the Point Lahash Ferry.
Second.
Offered by Commissioner Russo, seconded by Commissioner Dukaknovich. Is there any questions from?
Yes, can I get the description once?
Intergovernmental service charge of operations of the ferries, leave it at ferries, Plaquemines Parish ferries.
And maintenance, operation and maintenance. Is there a more thorough description anywhere?
As far as the intergovernmental service charge description, I think that'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I have to create a code for it.
All right.
Mr. Russo, can you explain to the public what you're trying to do that versus transferring the ferries to the government transferring the ferries to the port? Can you explain the difference to the people?
Yeah, the difference is that I'm trying to make sure that the ferries continue running January the 1st, and that there are funding operations that will accommodate that operation without any layoffs. Now, that doesn't take care of the Belle Chase ferry. I'm sure there'll be layoffs there. So this does not solve the ferry problem. It only addresses about 1/3 of the operation. And because we have a courthouse located where it is, that if we do not provide service, and we have not been able to do that in the other budget, I'm looking for a revenue source to be able to provide service to the courthouse, as well as comply with the demands of the needs.
All right. Commissioner Black?
Yeah, I think my position, I made it clear. Mr. Russo, I would definitely 100% support the transfer of ferry operations in its entirety, which would include the personnel, the assets, the land, or whatever it may be associated with that, to the port. That's the only way that I would support this. I think this is just really, having the port pick up a broken toy, and it's not working right. And yeah, I get what you're trying to do, but I can't support it. But if you wanted to actually do a transfer of all assets to include the personnel, the boats, the ferry ramps, or whatever's associated, I would support that.
Well, I offer the amendment.
Are there any other questions from the panel? How about from the audience?
What about from the administration first?
Okay, please support
Any
staff.
comments on from the administration?
What's preferable to you, Mr. Sanders? Would you rather just do the interagency transfer fee, or would you rather assume ownership of the vessels, boats, and take responsibility? I'm sorry, vessels, property, equipment, and take responsibility for those personnel?
I'd say if it's going to be given to us, then give it all to us. But right now, I think it might have to take some time with what you're taking from me. I would, if you're going to take 1.5 from me, can the port not get something in return for that, other than just sweeping the account and call it an interagency fee?
Sure. So earlier, it sounded like you were telling me something a little different. Maybe I misunderstood. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions from the staff?
No, I would like to give an update with this amendment. As far as the summaries, I just would like to say that the total revenues budgeted for 2021 will be $12,606,766. The total expenditures for 2020 will be budgeted at $13,472,261. So for 2021, we would have a deficit of $865,495, meaning those funds and that deficit would have to be recovered from our reserves, such as unrestricted.
All right. And so some of the nuts and bolts of why you would like to do it this way, Mr. Roussel, is because it's instant help, whereas if the port were to be transferred the ferries, the equipment, and responsibility for the personnel, it could take up to a year. And they would have to go through a hiring process, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and it would cost a little bit of money and it would take a long time. Is that some of the logic?
Yes.
Okay. All right. All right. And you,
Is that what you were referring to when you said you and I discussed it?
I'm sorry, say it again?
That is what you were referring to when you said you and I discussed it, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it seemed
Yeah,
like you
I
didn't want to
understand.
deal with the headache of running the entire department, and it would just be easier for you to cut a check. But now, and look, we all get new information, opinions change, I understand. I'm guilty myself.
Mr. Chairman, may I?
Yes, please.
I mean, we at the port fully understand the financial burden that the parish is going through. And as a stopgap, I can see the 1.5, okay? What I would like to receive is something for the 1.5.
All right. Mr. Kognovich has been in the queue for a little while.
Yeah, as we heard yesterday, civil service, if we go to that, maybe half of the deckhands might not be there because they don't have something on their civil service deal. So now we're going to lose more employees, and it's not going to happen if we give it to them right now, they're not going to take all the employees by civil service by January 1st.
Yeah, that's pretty tough. Sometimes they want you to be a 1,600-ton master to throw the rope on the deck, you know. Mrs. Newberry.
As Mr. Sanders said, he wants something in return, and we've kind of had this discussion, Mr. Sanders, with the possibility of buying property from the parish that's going to benefit the port. So that's a discussion I'd like to have with the board, of your opinion, to kind of fill some of that gap.
Kognovich again?
I think they received something a couple of years ago when they put a millage on the people to buy the property for Venture Global's property, so they received something from the people already.
Mr. Black, my apologies for skipping you. I didn't realize. I saw the hand go up.
Just when you say they, it was actually the council prior to this council and the prior council before that, but it was actually the council who put that millage on, not specifically them. Well, that's who had to vote for it. So, but I will say, if you want something for it, then, you know, I know you guys are looking at LSU Ag, other properties like that. For me, like I'll go back to my comments before, is we can kill multiple birds with one stone. So I would imagine that the property at Main Street and Avenue G would assess for no less than 1.5, maybe 2, who knows? That would go right into the general fund for the parish, either 1.5 or 2 million, whatever it's worth. We would be able to move the clerk of court and the assessor into the Popich building. That would eliminate the issues with the buildings and with their issues. You guys would then move to likely the tomato shed or the annex building, and then save Donald possibly on some money on leasing the boat dockage south of the ferry. It would be moved down north of the ferry on that owned piece of property. I think here's an opportunity. We could take a lot of lemons and make lemonade, if you would, and really have something that benefits not only PPG, but the port and the clerk, the assessor, a lot of different agencies. And you'd get something for your money. We'd get the money needed to operate that ferry. And I think everybody's happy across the board. I mean, that's just an idea. I would love to have that entertained. But that would be my first, if we talk about land acquisition.
That's correct.
That would be my first go-to, would be to get that done, because it just helps so many other agencies besides the port and PPG.
Thank you, Mr. Black. So I was under the impression that because this is going to be an interagency transfer fee, that it was realized while going through the budget that the port uses a certain percentage of the ferries. So port crossings, things like that, accessing different sides of the river is used by the port, much like our office staff, our offices, et cetera, is used by the port. And that's why Roussel's suggestion has traction.
No rate on that.
Let me say this. It looks to me like we're here at a chess game trying to play with someone that's not on the same table. That's the problem that I have with this whole situation about the port being over here and the government being over here. The law, LRS 34:1316 reads in pertinent part, the district acting through its governing authority, which no one wants to admit we are the governing authority. So we're negotiating with ourselves all the time. And, as long as we got that mentality that we're two separate entities, I want to get something for this and I want to get, well, guess what? The employees that almost got laid off yesterday wanted to get something too. They wanted to get their jobs back. Now, for the port to sit over there and act like they're in the Eiffel Tower and we're over here in the slum is appalling to me. That we got to sit here and play a chess game with ourselves. I'm just trying to keep the ferry running. It's a very simple concept. It's nothing elaborate. And I'm not here to let's make a deal. I'll put this on the table. If you don't want to run the ferry, fine. However, yesterday, when we were trying to save issues, we used one-time money. We used all kinds of creative financing deals. But today, when we want to keep a main service in operation, we got to come up with all these concoctions. This is a simple transfer, intergovernmental service charge between ourselves, which we are the governing authority. We went to court over this. We spent legal fees. No one has accepted it that is on the other side of this issue. They just haven't accepted it. Now, I've heard today that the best thing to do would be to consolidate this government back in the port and bring the port back in. And that would save a lot of money. And that would make a lot of people happy. Might not make certain people happy, but it would be more efficient and run better financially than it is today. I assure you of that. There's no way that this can happen by December the 31st with all of these scenarios that we are talking about. So if we want to shut the ferry down December 31st, then vote against this. This is an opportunity to try to keep the ferries running. That's all I'm proposing. Now, you know, things can change tomorrow or the next day or whatever. But the parish president, in his budget message, said transfer the operations to the port. The only way that can be done overnight is with a governmental transfer of funds. Now, if you don't want to operate, and I'm repeating myself, then vote against it. But until we understand that we are the sole governing authority and we can do these type of things, and as was mentioned earlier, yeah, this council, not the one sitting here, put that on the ballot. You know what they put it on the ballot at? As the sole governing authority of the port. And when that tax passed, as Mr. Konovich said, it didn't go to the general fund of the government. It went to the fund of the port to buy the property. And as he said, the people have already paid their dues to buy that property and invested in that property. And as a result of that, we may see some progress. But no one asked the guy sitting in the corner over there if he wanted to pay that tax, because they put it on him without a vote of the people. Now, I'm just trying to give some relief to the ferry operation. All of these other scenarios, you know, may come to fruition. But I'm not here to let's make a deal, give me this, and I want to get something back. You already got something if you want to separate it, but I don't look at it as separation. I look at it as we, and that's the problem we have around here. We don't look at it as we.
Mr. Schultz, please step up to the mic and state your name and address.
Chris Schultz, 411 Myclaw, Belle Chase, Louisiana. Whole bunch of issues that I'm going to try to keep track of. If you're saying we're one entity, then why are we having two budget meetings? I mean, that's...
Let me answer your question.
Okay, I will.
The reason we're having two budget meetings is because there was an ordinance passed to separate them out and put them on the side, although they are an enterprise fund. If you listen to their comments, they are an enterprise fund and don't really need to have a budget.
Okay, but what I'm getting at is, you say Supreme Court, all that.
I know Supreme Court.
Or the Supreme Court says that y'all are over them and all that, and that y'all are one entity, or basically is what your
Constitution says what
Constitution. Okay, but it went to the Supreme Court.
No, it did not.
I thought
It went
okay,
through the courts.
to the courts. Okay,
That's right.
and then that's why I'm asking. Okay, interagency, you have to receive something in return. Mr. Blink's comment about the port uses ferry, yes, but you're trying to put the whole 100% of the ferry under the port with very little in return to the port. Grant, they use it, they should pay their interagency fee to the port. Where are the fees going to be going that the residents pay? Are they going to go to the port, or are they going to go to the parish? That's a question.
Question is, it may not be fees.
What?
It may not be fees.
There may not be fees?
It might not be fees.
I'm saying that the $1 I paid across right now, that's going to go away. Possibly. Okay.
Bellamy's been trying to.
But what I'm getting at is an interagency fee. I agree, but they have to receive something. Like, you can't just, if that's the case, then why not just take their whole 2 whatever million fund balance and use it to cover the whole shortfall of the budget on the parish side?
I'm trying to work with the port.
I know, but that's what you're basically saying, is we're just going to raid the piggy bank. And to my opinion, this is a reverse situation of what happened with the fire department and EMS. There we tried to merge it, never did it properly. Here we kind of separated it out, but we're just keep going back and forth with the funds playing these shell games. I kind of agree with Mr. Black's comment. He actually beat me to it. I was thinking the same thing, is give them the property that the assessor or wherever they're trying to move to, 1.5 million. That allows that grant to be used for upgrades to the building, $650,000. We won't use free money. That allows the assessor and the clerk to move to the Popish building. We can sell that property one time, and then that goes to the parish government, which will help our financial situation. I understand there's a whole difference of opinion on parish, port, all that. Y'all don't agree. I'm just looking at it from financial standpoint about interagency fees and all that. But again, what's going to happen next year? Are we going to keep charging them $1.5 million for the foreseeable future? I mean, at some point, it's not solving the ferry problem in reality. It's just prolonging it. Every year, at some point, their fund balance is going to go down, and they're not going to have the $1.5 million to pay for the ferries. So what happens in the long run? I understand what we're trying to do. We're trying to save jobs. We're trying to save the ferry. I understand that completely. But it's not solving the actual problem. This is a Band-Aid on a massive wound that needs to be addressed.
And let me address that. Nothing that we have done here in the last day and a half has solved the problem. It's been a Band-Aid all along.
I agree.
It's been one-time funds all along. I didn't hear you come up and talk about that yesterday when they used one-time funds to plug the budget. I don't hear you say that today. Now, let me say this.
Is it no one time? This is the one time that was brought up. One-time funds, basically.
No, yesterday we appropriated
No,
BP
today.
funds to pay a lot of people.
I could not be here all day yesterday, and
Well, I'm just pointing it out.
I agree with you. I did not agree with using BP monies, but I understood the point. I don't agree with it then. And if it comes up again today, I will, and I'm here, I will say something. I agree with you
Let me
that.
finish up. You talk about selling the building and plugging a hole in the budget with one-time asset sale. I'm opposed to that.
Okay.
So I don't believe we should use one-time funds for recurring expenses. Very basic principle. That's the way I voted, except yesterday I was forced to vote for the ambulance service with one-time funds.
Okay.
Because I want to see an ambulance roll up to somebody's house that's having a heart attack. So all of these, scenarios that you can put together, and they sound great, right? But they're using one-time funds. We sell them a piece of property, we plug a hole in the budget. Next year it's gone. Same thing we're talking about here, right? I never said that the $1.5 million will go away next year. But the ferry has been used over the years, historically, as a fireboat. It could be used as a fireboat. No different than the boats. No difference in the boats that are sitting at the dock right now. They had pumps put on them years ago. They may be taken off now, but they were used as fireboats. So you can shake your head all you want, but they were fireboats.
It's true.
So a follow-up. We have a roughly $2.3 million fund balance, it sounded like. So 1.5 this year, 1.5 next year. You're saying it might never go away. At what point do we solve the problem of the ferry? And that's all I'm trying to get at.
Mr. Schultz, I think there was a lot of bargaining and thinking out loud that's been happening up here, and those are, go to some of your questions. Apparently, there's a faction of the council that's gotten together and assembled what they would like to see. And then the other side, it seemed pretty well known what the intentions were walking in. And even Mr. Sanders seems to have changed his mind, given the new information about bargaining for land out of this deal. Because from a prior conversation, it seemed like you were interested in just, cutting the check for 1.5 and not having to deal with the ownership of it. Now, I would actually like to see the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District logo welded on the smokestacks of the boat, and they own them, and they are
I would be
experts
more
at
okay with
getting
that.
experts at getting grants, as we've seen in this budget. $360,000 to throw some security cameras out on some.
I would be more
by
okay
the
with
river.
that. And that was my understanding from yesterday was Mr. Black and Mr. Russell didn't seem to say anything yesterday when Mr. Black said was, I will be okay with it if all assets, personnel, everything went under the port. Because then you don't have this shell game of money moving, okay, is it going to be 1.5 million this year? Is it going to be 1.7? Just put it all under the port, all the assets, all the personnel, all the operations. And I don't 100% agree with it, but I'm more on board with that because then Mr. Sanders can do his job and make the required operations work. Right now, he's still going to have to go through, I'm guessing, Mr. Rousseau, I guess his operations is ferry. So like, I mean, it's really not solving the problem. It's just prolonging the problem. And that's my view.
What I'd like to see is that the
Chairman.
port become part of the government again and merge it back in as an enterprise fund.
Mr. Bartholomew?
Call for the question. Call for the question.
You don't want to hear from the public?
Call for the question. We've been discussing this for half an hour, same thing over and over again. You don't want to go with the question, say so.
Mr. Valley?
Mr. Batali, thank you. Appreciate it. Let me be clear. What you're proposing is to take the money from the port and put it back to balance the budget. You're not talking about the port operating these ferries and changing all these personnel at this time and confuse the issue, because they can't handle it. And like you said, maybe next year, you all can work on a plan to take it back in, do whatever you want. But I think what you're proposing right now is amicable, I think, with all the council members in light of what you did yesterday with all the deal. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Mr. Henry?
Oh, hey, Carl, you know I'm with you on global venture. I'm with you. But this here, I got to agree with Benny on this. The people need this, man. It's what the people need. Sometimes, hey, we got to bite the bullet sometimes. I'm not saying Mr. Black had a bad deal, but right now, the people need this deal, man. Let it go through, man. Let it go through, you know. We give you that. We gave you that 1.5 mil for 3 years. You got the land, you got everything you needed. So this what the people need now. You know, give and take a little bit. You know, this for the people, man. This for the people.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir. Please step up to the mic and state your name and address.
I'm 64 years old, and I see the ferry been running since I was a little kid. And I don't know why you want to shut that ferry down and cut people back. Y'all gonna cut your salary?
We don't want to do.
No, I ask
any
you a
of this.
question. Are you gonna cut your salary?
I don't think we can legally, can we?
What you mean legally? You're cutting everybody's salary. It's different. You know what y'all agree on with me?
You're talking about
When I
something.
listen to y'all talking, it's a piece of. You listen to Ben Hussein and Mr. Patalabi, y'all do a whole lot better. And you, just don't say anything. I ain't never been in a meeting with a bunch of kilos in my life. You know anything about Tyler boat up? None of y'all. You might know, you might know, you might know. Have you idea how to tie a boat up? It's very simple. How you tie a ferry up? You don't even know.
Sir, I have a 100-ton master license. I spent 9 years working
So how you tie a
offshore.
ferry? Ask you a question.
What's that?
How do you tie a ferry?
I'm sorry, say again.
How do you tie a boat when they dock?
Please step up to the mic.
How do you tie up a boat when they dock? You don't know.
Are you talking about with a bit?
You tie the boat up to the dock. Yeah, how you tie it up?
With a rope.
I know you tie the rope. How you tie the rope? How do you tie the rope?
Figure eight it and half hitch it.
You figure eight it. If it's a figure eight, you're guessing. You know what? I ain't never come around here. This is the most budget, dumbest Kujonkas I've been around in my life. You know what a Kujonka is? Dumb and stupid in English.
Thank you for your comments, sir. I
Mr. Chairman,
appreciate that.
call for question,
All right,
Mr.
we're going to
Chairman.
call a
Let's move with
question. Mrs. Riley.
Tracy Riley, 13482, Highway 23, resident of the parish. We were close to solving this issue, and I just want to redirect the conversation back to that. It sounded like we had an acceptance from the port to take on this responsibility in the exchange of, or some, we're about to do a deal. It is a deal. Can we not get back to that and resolve this issue and move on? Give them the opportunity to run this port for a year, and we revisit this a year from now and see how it goes.
Mr. Patel, call a question. You ready?
All right, thank you for your comments, Mrs. Riley.
Thank you.
All right, machine's open. And the measure passes with Black and Arborough voting no. All right. Moving along.
Okay. We were going through individual questions on the details, if there are any others.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay. If there are none, we can move to the next tab, which would be the 5-year capital improvement.
That's largely been scrubbed. Already, huh? All right, Mr.
Oh, you think they could make it a little larger, huh?
Huh?
You think they could make it a little larger?
Okay, our 5-year capital improvement, we have a total of 8 projects listed, numbered. Number 1, land acquisition parcel 1 and 3 has been completed in 2018. Number 2, culvert replacements, that one still has funding left. We discussed those in the details and within the summary earlier. So this is basically just a recap of those projects that we have on the books. The culvert budget that we originally appropriated has not been depleted. So yes, there's still funding. Yes, it's still ongoing. Yes.
Ms. Shambrell, the audience asked if you could enlarge it.
Thank you, Mark.
So project number 2 is the culverts. We had no increase in the budget. Beginning of 2020 available funds was $67,949. As of August 31st, no funds had been used. Project number 3 was completed as well. Project number 3, B1, track 3 was completed in 2018. Project 4, B3 relocation, that project is ongoing. We asked for no increase in that budget. The beginning of 2020 available funds for that project was $900,012. As of August 31st, $153,658 have been expended from that project funding. Project number 5 has been completed in 2020. That project was in 2019, the B3 access property. Project 6, land acquisition tower property. That project was completed in 2020. Project number 7, land acquisition, the industrial complex. In 2020's budget, we had appropriated some funds and we are reducing and basically unfunding this 5-year capital improvement project with an estimated remaining balance as of August 31st, 2020 of, a used amount of $129,704. So that remaining amount, as you see here, of $4,160,000 is being reduced and unfunded for the land acquisition industrial complex. In our last project on the books we're adding is the Werder dredging project for 2021. And it's basically an increase to cover the life of the project, of the dredging project that the port is doing in conjunction with Plaquemines Parish government.
Thank you for the breakdown. Are there any questions from
Shambrell.
the board?
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
One second. Are there any questions from the board? All right, please, Mr. Valley.
Item 3, the relocation, is that port ship services?
Yes, it is.
Okay, why hadn't that been completed date? I thought we were talking about swapping a piece of property with them and we wouldn't have to spend that additional monies. I'm sorry, you're waiting on the Corps to do that?
Permitting purposes.
But if you do that, you won't have to spend the additional dollars, as I understand. You can swap the properties and not have to pay them that much money. It was a huge amount of money about a relocation, which was unreal at the time when that was discussed. I thought you all were working on a different plan to save that money.
No, B3 is still ongoing.
It's still going, you're gonna have to pay them $1.2 million to relocate? Just for,
It's still ongoing.
what's ongoing, you on negotiations, or did you have to pay them?
We're waiting on the Corps to provide us a permit. That's it. Waiting on the Corps to provide us a permit.
I say,
When they do- excuse me, when they-
But let's get this discussion out in the open, because I have some questions about it as well.
Well, we're waiting on the permit from the Corps.
To do a relocation build that the port's going to build?
Yes, which the board has approved to do that and have approved the CEA. So we're waiting on the Corps right now to provide us a permit to allow us to then swap title and then start construction on the process. And as I've told you a few months back, as soon as we get the permit and we start looking at the construction specs, we'll send that to the board.
And I've talked to the Corps since then.
Who'd you talk to?
I'll go back to my notes, but you don't need to.
Who'd you talk to? It does matter because we talked to the colonel, we talked to Steve Roberts, who's our assistant, and we also talked to Mr. Ali, who handles the geotech work, which is the main issue. So it is important because if you talk to someone about it, it's important that we have a conversation, who you talk to, when, and what information you received.
The information that I received, that I'd have to go back to my notes to find out, to remember the gentleman's name, it was about the permitting process and that we were asking for some minor changes, or that's what.
No, we were not asking for changes, sir. The Corps was asking for us to have changes. And so what has happened over time is that the Corps will provide comments. We would answer the comments. The Corps comes back with new comments. And what we've been trying to do is see where the bottom is. What is it that they honestly need at the end of the day? So when you get back with your notes, let me know who you talked to so we can get on the same page.
Let me ask you this. When's the last time you met with the Corps?
I had a phone conversation with the Corps last week with Mr. Steve Roberts.
What's his name?
Mr. Steve Roberts, who's the direct assistant to the colonel. And I've had conversations with Mark Wingate, Colonel Murphy, and their team. And we have meetings between the colonel's team and our team on the project.
Yeah, and I see that on the calendar quite frequently. How often are those meetings actually held? And I just don't.
It depends on progress. So if the Corps comes to us and say you need to work on X amount of items, we have to go back, work on those items. Once we have them, we send them back over. If they come back with a comment, and unfortunately for the last few years there's been multiple comments, we're trying to figure out where is the bottom and get on the same page with this. So we are dealing with their staff all the way up to the colonel. Sandy and I have had many conversations with the colonel on this issue, and he has put as his main point of contact for the entire process, Mr. Stephen Roberts, who I'm in direct contact with.
And so what is being worked on right now to finalize the request from the Corps?
Yeah, at the end of the day, it comes down to the geotech work and the structure that's going to be put on the new property. So our team is working with their team to make sure that we are doing what is needed to make sure we maintain the proper safety measures.
So is the Corps waiting on information from the port?
We're waiting on information. We're waiting on information from the Corps, and the Corps is waiting on information from us. And so Steve Roberts and I are directly talking to one another. But at the end of the day, it's the Corps that determines what the port needs to do. And as we give them answers, as long as they keep coming back with comments, we have to adjust.
And Mr. Russo, if I may, that's one of our complaints to the colonel, is that when we think that we've answered everything they want, then they come back with 3 or 4 more other items. And we're just like, just tell us everything that you need. And we think we satisfy it. And again, we keep getting these comments. And we've been with the colonel 3 or 4 times face to face and saying, we need help. And he's put Wingate on this. They know that it's holding up a $18 billion project. And the biggest problem is that the site that they're located in now, you could drive over the levee. The new site is not grandfathered. So you got a bridge over the levee and don't know where the bottom of it is. But we're digging into it extremely hard.
So whose court is the ball in right now?
We have answered their latest, and we're waiting for them to return back to us.
So you're waiting on a call back from the Corps?
We're waiting on information from them. Yes, sir.
I'll tell you, I'm going to have a conversation with Mr. Mark Wingate as well. So if you want to know who I talked to, you can write down Mr. Mark Wingate.
Okay, I appreciate that.
All right, I have a couple of questions. So, if able, could the actual letter or whatever the written ask be produced either from Venture Global or the United States Coast Guard mandating that the facility must have been moved? I don't know if I've ever seen that, and we've done an extraordinary amount of legwork to satisfy that requirement and spent an incredible amount of money to do it as well. Also, another thing, we were talking about transferring the ferry service over in a number of different capacities and theories. That same company owns land on both sides of the Point de la Hache ferry landing. If we would have just waited this out the right way, we could have transferred them the whole site, built our ferry landing up where the siphons are at, and they could have driven a truck right onto their barges. The dock would have already been there. We could have made it very, very easy on ourselves. It's just a few miles down the river. But anyway, I would love to see the letter that actually, whether it was from Venture Global or the United States Coast Guard, the demand for whatever sort of safety reasons which have been presented to us as the reasoning to relocate that property, which ultimately our security barge is going to go on. It seems strange we would still have the property occupied by people in one way or another, whether it's our people or Port Ship's people, which, all are maritime professionals and have TWIC cards and have passed security clearances. But if staff could please provide that would be very, very beneficial to understanding kind of how this started off. All right, thank y'all. Mr. Valley, anything else?
I had a wise old retired judge once tell me that when he retired, he lost that filter between his brain and his mouth, and everything seemed to change in his life as to what he did and how he addressed them. And I'm probably going to use that right now and let what's in my brain come out my mouth without filtering it. I have to tell you, I've watched you guys at the last budget hearings. I watched you before, and you all maintain quite a good decorum, even when you all disagree with each other. And there's sometimes heated arguments, but you agree to disagree at all times. What I've watched with this port since I've been involved in looking at this, the disrespect of your council, which is the board, from the staff of this, you being an exception to it, Sandy. Disrespect to you all, and I listened this again just a minute ago with what took place with you, Mr. Roussel, and this gentleman right here. And I have to tell you, if I was sitting on your board, and I've hired a lot of people, I've employed 1,600 people at a time, I'd defund his budget and he'd be out of here in a heartbeat. The insult and argumentative that he presented to you in disrespect by questioning you, we're here to present facts. And I just totally, you guys wake up to what's going on. We did this with the bridge. They didn't regard it. They sued you back and forth because they still don't believe that you all are in charge. You all are the board. You all are the port. You make the decisions for it, the plans for it, the organization of it, and the operations of it. Employ these people. And they need to get in tune to that. Bo, I agree with you. Some point in time, it might be wise to give them all of it and let them run with it. But that's not where it's at today. I think Marcus made a position. They all know that can't happen. The easiest route right now is what you did. Use the funds, bide your time, and let's see where we go next year and the year after that.
Mr. Valley, I think we have a great opportunity this year for the port staff to start setting off on getting grants for the ferry system. Last year, during the summertime, when I presented a number of reforms, which ranged from reduced hours, increased tolls, more stringent collection protocol, things like that. All of those things were mentioned by a private company that was interested in running the ferries. So these are all things that we can implement. And the other half of their success with running the ferries in New Orleans is they're able to get a lot of grant money for the shipyard visits, for capital improvements like new engines, new boats, things like that. And the port is very, very good at it. So I think that in the long run, it will be better if we have the boat people handle the boats. But thank you for your comments.
Let me respond to that if you don't mind. I'm familiar with the two LaBorde boys that are running the ships in New Orleans. They're doing it for the RTA, which deep funding sources onto it, which we don't have. Until we get the lobbyists and we get back in Washington and get some support to these things, you're not going to save a nickel by using an outside contractor over what you got now.
Absolutely. Thank you. Mr. Schultz?
Again, I'm just going to say this really quick. According to you, the port then is doing work for the parish government by going to get grants and stuff. Are y'all going to pay them an interagency fee?
Chris,
I mean, that's what you just said. I'm just asking.
Chris, what we're trying to do is,
Go ahead.
if I can please, thank you. Look, what I would like to see, and I'm one person up here. I am thinking aloud. I'm trying to do this like a human and not like behind the scenes and then come up here. I'm just trying to share some of my thought process here. But what needs to happen is we need to step control over to the port. Over time, we need to do it right. We're doing a stopgap measure. They do need to be aware that they probably will be receiving the port boats probably as soon as next year. And they can plan for that now or put their head in the sand and pretend like that's not going to happen. But again, I'm thinking out loud. I'm trying to put these thoughts out there so it's not a surprise to folks. And it's on the record, it's on camera to where we could say we talked about this in a public meeting, where have you been if it does not happen?
And I agree with all that. If that's the plan, all that, then they need to start. But for right now, what you're saying is they're having to spend time out of their day to work on something that is not under their operations. And that's why I'm just asking. I mean, we're trying, again, it's just how we're doing everything. It's not really clear on who's in charge of the ferries right now. And I understand technically the parish is in charge of ferry, but the port's just paying for the operations.
That's correct. You're right.
And to me, that's misappropriation of funds.
Well, that's your opinion.
Because you're basically saying they're going to pay for a service that they're not receiving any benefit or operating for, and the people are basically getting free services.
That's your opinion, and we appreciate you voicing it. But
I'm just saying.
I genuinely disagree with you, and I refer you back to the law that allows us to do this. And that's because we are the sole governing authority. And,
I agree with that.
You want me to read it to you again?
No, I agree that y'all are sole governing authority. I never questioned that. It's just the way we're doing interagency fees, it's not really clear on what is really going on.
So you're saying that because we're transferring 1.5 to the government, where the revenue's going, is that even legal? Is that what you question?
That's it's under my accounting knowledge and everything, because the port is not receiving any benefit from this, and that they have a separate audit and everything. And if I was the auditor, I would be like, what is this 1.5 billion? I would want to see the contract. I would want to see all the information on it, and I would be questioning what service did y'all receive, what benefit did y'all receive, what basically they're providing a free $1.5 million to Plaquemines Parish government.
Point of order. We on the 5-year. We dealing with the 5-year capital improvement budget. Now we're off the subject.
Thank you.
I agree. I was just questioning his.
All right. To answer the question, though, we will immediately, at the next available chance, we are going to draft legislation to where fire monitors will be added to any of the ferry vessels that do not have them, and they will serve double duty as fire boats, and that is the capacity that they will be, that the port is going to be taking them over in, as well as, paying for the crossing there. So, moving on.
Not on the ferry no more.
As a member of the public, just observing this, it does not appear appropriate to take all of that money from the port and give it over to the government. I agree with Mr. Schultz. And as far as the exchange between, I presume you were talking about Mr. Matthews and Mr. Roussel. There was talking over each other, but both of them were answering each other's questions, so I don't think it was anything inappropriate about that. And it just gives me the sense that while it may be true the government does have governing authority over the port, you're crossing a line into micromanaging the port. And I understand, you know, what you say the law is saying, but you got to give these individuals the opportunity to run the port as you have charged them with.
So,
Thank you for your
thank you
comments.
for your comments, Ms. Riley. However, I don't agree with you about the micromanaging. This is a budgeting process which is delegated to this body. We are going through a budgeting process which is our responsibility. So it's not micromanaging anything. If it's anything, we're micromanaging the budget.
I'm talking
That is our
about,
responsibility.
I'm
And
talking
that's what
about
we're
the
doing.
exchange you just had with Mr. Matthews, the 1.5 to handle the issue with the issues with the ferry. That's not what I'm discussing. I'm discussing the exchange that you just had about talking to the Coast Guard colonel and who's talking to whom. I mean, it's almost as if you are not going to be satisfied if you're not a part of every conversation and certainly not a part of every decision that's made that the port is making. You appear very suspicious. I don't know what that relationship is all about, but it is coming across clear, at least to my one observation, that there's something going on here and it's impacting your ability to get this port project done together. It's causing a lot of delays, and I'm beginning not to trust that you all are on the same page. As a member of the public, this seems disjointed. There appears to be a lot of agendas going on here, and I'm losing confidence that you're making decisions in the interests of what's best for the parish.
And I appreciate your
I'm
comments.
not arguing with you.
No, I'm not. I'm just going to address your comments because I appreciate them. And the reason that I bring these issues up because I've heard them so many times in the past. I've heard this same reasoning for this permit for a year now. So that is the reason why I push on the issue about where we are on these projects, because I've heard this same answer several times. And I have no other responsibility but to hold the people who work for us accountable. And that's my job, as I have expressed to you in the past. So if you think there's some distrust here, you are right on point. You are correct, and there is a lot of distrust here because I have been misled many times, and I'm still being misled today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Black, please.
Yeah, just a quick question to Sandy or Paul, I'm not sure. This transfer of 1.5, did Mr. Rathburn opine at all on the legality of it? I mean, have y'all run that aground through legal, by any chance?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, good. I'm glad you brought that up.
I'm just asking a question, I don't know.
He stated the importance of having a CEA, a minimum, when you do this. Of course, I don't think that's any big deal.
Y'all seem to know about it, but like Mr. Blink always keeps saying about these other meetings, I wasn't involved in those.
Right? You don't need to see that.
You don't need to see that?
Just read.
My name's not on that email.
Because they already got one with the internet.
Let me say, I received a call from Dr. Gouy a couple of days ago that said he had talked to Rennie and he had talked about how he felt very comfortable with this transaction. I received a call from him this morning that said that Rathburn had called him and expressed some concerns. And so he suggested I contact our attorney, Danny, which I did, which issued the opinion right here that I've been reading from. And so if you talk about mistrust here, you know, we got a lawyer who we are taking funds from to help fund this ferry writing an opinion that it may have an issue. So if he doesn't have an interest in that, you know, he shouldn't even be asked the question because we're taking money out of his budget that he's the one in charge to. Now, I didn't want to go there, but since you want to bring this up, this is the opinion we got from our attorney, which, again, we got one attorney here and one attorney here, and we don't need to have two attorneys. We've already been to court on this issue, and, you know, I'm tired of saying it. And when you talk about mistrust, this is the reason why there's mistrust. Mr. Riley, I've already filed the court case, and the court case was decided.
Please, I will
Period.
not. If there's going to be comments, we need to come to the microphone, but We need to move forward down the agenda, please. Shambrell.
Okay, that completes the discussion on the capital improvement budget. Our next section is the manpower table. The manpower table in the 2021 proposed budget did include a 4% increase across the board. That does not necessarily mean that that's what the employee was going to get, but in short, that increase has been removed through today's earlier amendments on salaries, taxes, and retirements. So the manpower structure will be updated to reflect, not to include that 4% increase, and that includes the general department here, and as well as the rescue boat department listed on the very next page. There's no questions on that. Next section.
Are there any questions from the table on this first section here? All right, there's a position that's not filled. Are there any questions or amendments around that position?
Is it needed?
It's the senior accountant number 1. Have y'all hired yet for that position, Shambrell?
We have not hired yet due to COVID that had been put on hold. We do have plans in 2021 to do the hiring for that position.
So you're going to hire someone?
I would like to hire someone.
So the total budget for that position is $74,957.78.
Including all,
Was that the position you held before, or that's a new position we made?
no, we had for the 2020 budget, we did some changes as far as removing a clerk and adding in a senior accountant too, due to our increase in grants and development and what we were, in our improvements we are working towards with our procurement. So as far as improving the procurement, managing the grants, on the accounting side, in 2020, we added a new position, and that was the senior accountant 2. In 2020, we advertised for senior accountant 2, and we promoted within. So due to the promotion within, that left that employee's position to be vacant. And now we have a senior accountant 1 position vacant. And again, due to COVID and being, basically in phase 1 and 2, we didn't do any hiring in 2020. But we do plan to continue our plans we have for 2020 and 2021. And those services and in the position is still needed.
Shambrell, through the procurement contract, somebody's made available to you a few times a week or on a part-time basis? I remember there was mention of a position that was baked into that.
This is the only discussion we had about a position. Like I said, in 2020, when we made changes from clerk to senior accountant 2, that person, that was going to be one of their focuses on the procurement. The procurement consultants that we talk with and we're working on this project with, they serve in no position as an employee to the Plaquemines Port. They serve as a consultant, so they are not an employee in any form.
An amendment prepared to remove that position, the funding from that position at this time? So I offer the following amendment to delete the funding on the 12-1201, grade 22.
All right, offered by Roussel, seconded by Commissioner Newberry. Are there any questions from the board? Commissioner Arborough, please.
I can't support this because in one breath we're talking about them going out looking for grants for ferries and things, and then now we're going to take away a position that she says is crucial for them to be able to do that and manage that properly. So I can't support this.
COVID's not going away anytime soon, so I think it's a position we don't need for 2021. It's something we can come back to at the end of next year, and we can address it then.
Yeah, I'm not certain that the accountants would be doing that higher level grant work myself. All right, like to call a question, please?
Yes.
All right. Black and Arborough dissenting. Everyone else at the table voted in favor. Moving along, please. Are there any other changes to this portion of the staff? All right, hearing none, moving along.
Next section of the budget is the supplemental information. This section is basically includes any authorized debt or any unissued debt, any conditions of debt service sinking funds, delinquent ad valorem taxes, and language in a description of our retirement funds as well. Is there any questions on that? Merely a reporting section.
Any questions for Shimbrow? All right, hearing none. Does the public have any questions here? All right, hearing none. Moving along. Oh, Mr. Henry, I'm sorry. Please.
Hey, just for the colonel, when Global Venture put that building up, you're gonna get that money. You're gonna get your raise.
Thank you.
Happens soon enough, huh? All right, moving along.
Next section would include the long-term debt summary. The Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District has no issued or outstanding long-term debt. Our next section would include a copy of the adoption ordinances, and those are to be they were introduced at the last port meeting and will be voted on in order to adopt the budget, the proposed budget with the state amendments that were agreed upon today. And if there are no questions, that concludes my presentation on the 2021 proposed budget.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Williams. Are there any questions from the panel up here? All right, how about from the public? All right, Mrs. Riley, please.
First, I'd like to thank Shambrell for the job she did.
Thank you.
And I'd like to thank Shambrell and for meeting prior to this meeting, working on the policy as well as the budget. And I think that it was beneficial today to be able to have some of these amendments prepared in advance and an understanding of where we were headed. So I thank you for that as well.
I just want to stand in, as I've learned, this is my first budget hearing for the parish of Plaquemines, and I'm only sorry that I didn't get a chance to attend yesterday. But it appears that the port is doing a fine job in running its business. And I just want to put on the record that there was a reason that there was a vote that they operate separate from the government. And I think that this is an example of why they're getting it done. And I just want to just publicly say thank you for doing a good job.
Ms. Riley, I have to agree with you. I think they're doing a fine job too, but of course it takes a board to continue to keep the policies in place and make sure that the ports continue to do a good job. So that's why we're here. But thank you so much for your
Absolutely. I have no issue with having, a higher authority monitoring and making sure the policies, rules, and laws are adhered to. I recognize that as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Riley. Mr. Valley.
Very quickly, Jambro, since I asked the most questions and go into details, I commend you on what you did putting this together. You did an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you. And again, I would like to apologize for not having all of my technical supplies.
All good.
Ms. Shambrell, I would also like to congratulate you. I was okay when you got your raise. You deserved it. Now people see you were worth it. Yeah, you were worth it.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah. And look, a lot of people criticize Mr. Roussel, but I'm going to tell people something. Mr. Roussel been at this for a long time. We have stats, we have it all. But I can tell you one thing. He's going to be straightforward with the people. He's going to be straightforward with you. And that's something I always appreciate. Right or wrong, he's there. And the people really need to appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Henry. And again, much appreciation to the staff. You all put in long hours and met with us many times to get this done. Thank you all again for being here for half the day. All right, if there's no other questions, I'd like to conclude this meeting of the Plaquemines Parish Council, serving as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District. And we'll call the meeting to close at 1:03 p.m. Oh, I'm sorry.
Offer the motion to adjourn.
Offered by Bartholomew, seconded by Commissioner Arborough. And take, the machine's open. All right. All in favor?
We voted.
All right.
If y'all want leftover sandwiches, we have